welcome everybody to the After Dark Show. I'm Don Rogers. Joining me again tonight is a friend of mine. Well, I call him a friend now. Like, him and I have got to know each other over the last year and a half and had some pretty cool conversations. And I'm really happy to have him back because he just has some very interesting perspectives and always some intriguing information. And tonight we're going to get into trauma-based mind control and attachments and probably some other really cool stuff. So everybody, help me welcome back my friend, Nate Ciszek.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here, Don. Thanks for having me. And we are friends, by the way. We're friends of necessity, friends of choice, and all that good shit. Just because we live so far away doesn't mean we have to beat around the bush. You're my friend, so I just wanted to make that clear. Anyway, it's great to be back. For those who don't know me, I'm a military I'm a military MyLab survivor, mind control victim. I've been abducted and so forth. I've been in various programs, and it's just a lifelong of discovery and figuring it out. And I became a MyLab disclosure activist, or just a plain old disclosure activist, just because I have to do the right thing. And on top of it, this is healing, and we need to have a community to get through this together. So I'm here to contribute to that. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here on the show tonight. So thanks for having me, Don.
Absolutely. And I like where, you had brought up before about the trauma-based mind control. It's something that I never thought of because I've had a lot of I know everybody's had trauma, but it's like I never realized until you brought that up where my traumas put me mentally, I guess is the best way to put it. And when you pitched this concept, I was very intrigued. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, what I've noticed, and this is just trial and error of going through this, is that the trauma that they inflict basically puts internal trigger mechanisms inside your subconscious, and it's in the forefront of your conscious mind too. And when things happen, even though you may have gained some ground, you may have gotten control over some psychic abilities, you've done some healing, you've done some integration, you're not as easily manipulated and remotely controlled like you were, and things, and you start to make progress. What I found is there's internal triggers that can be activated, which if you're put under certain types of stress that has to do with like an internal, like a programming. So it's hard to explain this. Before I really get into it, I wanted to talk about something else real quick to get it off my chest. It's just kind of a complaint, but I'll get to that in a moment. So we'll get on that subject in just a moment. I just have to say something. Here's something that happens to MyLabs. It happens to targeted individuals too. It's called Medical CoIntel Pro, and it happens quite frequently in my life, frequently enough to where periodically I have a dilemma that I shouldn't have to deal with. So just to give you an idea of what it's like, and I want to give you a real world example, because the problem with this is that as it happens, you don't always know what the origin is. It could be something to do with some external manipulation from handlers and so forth using technology, or it could just be the broken, weaponized, genocidal medical system that most countries or all countries are under. And here in the United States, we have a special flavor of it because it's private for profit. So it could be strictly because of that or overreach from the government. So that's the little disclaimer. This could be overreach from the government. It could be the weaponized medical system, or it could be handlers, or likely all of the above. And it doesn't matter, because if it's one side doing it to you, the other side will make use of it somehow. So let's get into it. So I've been 51. I've never had a prescription that I couldn't get filled at a pharmacy unless they were out of it. So I go to my doctor on Wednesday. It's pain management. I get a low dose opioid because I've had 7 spine surgeries, and there's nothing more they can do for me except give me some pills and then, hope it helps. So I go on my monthly appointment. It's Wednesday. It's like I get out of there. I get home at about 5 o'clock. So there's no chance of getting anything done. But my prescription is electronically transmitted. So I'm fine. There's nothing to worry about, or so I think. So next day comes. It's now Thursday. I don't have a text message on my phone saying that my prescription's ready. So I wait a little bit. I call the pharmacy, and lo and behold, he tells me, he says, because I'm receiving a controlled substance, and I also have another prescription for a controlled substance, which is testosterone cypionate, and because I haven't gotten my the refill that I had sitting there, which they filled without authorization for naproxen and another drug that was hormonally related called anastrozole that I had to go off of due to a hormone imbalance that it caused. And I was feeling really bad on this stuff. And I gave it up and I felt 100% better. So I go to my doctor on the 30th to talk about that. So I'm officially off of it. We can do something else. And maybe I don't need it anymore. It was weight dependent is what it was. And I was producing too much estrogen. So I don't care about talking about my medical stuff here, but because it's for a good purpose. So I'm asking him why, like, is my prescription ready? And he goes to tell me that because I'm not taking my naproxen and my other drug, that he can't fill the prescription because of my health care, my health insurance. And I'm like, come on now, I know better than this. So while I'm trying to get through and get the straight story out of this guy, the guy next to him, I hear him say, tell him the DEA called. So he says, it actually wasn't your insurance company. And it's like, I guess they think I'm dumb here, because he says the Drug Enforcement Administration called us directly about you and flagged you because you were receiving 2 drugs together that are a controlled substance, and you're not taking your naproxen. So and your other prescription. So they warned us we'd lose our medical license if we fill these prescriptions for you, or their, I don't know, it's medical license or their prescription license, whatever it is, because we go through audits and blah blah blah. And I'm going through this, and I'm talking to this guy, and I'm thinking to myself, like, here we go again. It's like, this is so absurd. So I just give it up. I'm like, all right, I'll call the insurance company. Well, they had nothing to do with it. So I call the doctor up, and of course I get an answering machine. I get switched right to an answering machine. It's like a big problem, but it goes right to a machine. So I leave a message. Next day comes, which was today. Nothing. No response. Called twice. Left 2 messages. So I'm in limbo without a prescription, just about out. But that's an example a potential medical CoIntel probe. But my point is that you can't always say that it is. And what they also try to do is they'll do so many things to you, regardless if it's medical related or just anything. I mean, you'll go to the store and everything you buy right off the shelf is defective. You can even you take it back 5 and 6 times, and then you've cleaned out the entire shelf of all of the product you're trying to buy. Everything's defective. So you go to another store and it starts again. And this is the kind of things that I went through. It was like an 80% defect rate, not just once in a while, but for years it was like this. Sometimes I would go and I'd be taking things back like a chainsaw over and over again. And I start going back to the store, and there's only 1 or 2 left. I go back and the shelf is fully stocked, and all the ones I took back are on the shelf for me to take back again and buy again. So this is the kind of nonsense that happens, man. And then people, when you tell people this stuff, because they're using tech, people say black magic, but it's like the manipulation of energy with the intent to commit harm, black magic, however you're going to look at it. You can call it what you want. It's not somebody there with a magic wand casting spells at a military base. They're using technology. So they can do this stuff remotely. They can move a pendulum. For those people who think they're safe on a pendulum and only evil spirits can deceive them, no, the United States military, the Canadian military, and all of these militaries are in these programs have tech that they can telekinetically move a pendulum, move the thing on a Ouija board. They can move your dowsing rods and give you whatever answer you want or they want you to hear. And they can put the messages in your head. So do you think it's Jesus Christ? Do you think it's Allah? Or do you think it's Satan or whoever else, or your favorite ET or spirit guide? So they have the ability to do a lot of stuff to you. And so I'm just in the middle of that now, and I'm just kind of getting through it. And I'm actually, it's kind of funny because I'm going to have a little bit of revenge on this. I'm going to go into the pharmacy on Monday after I've gotten it straight, and I'm going to call the guy out and say, I want to know the field office that called. I want to know the agent, the auditor, whoever it is. I want to call the DEA and get this straight because I just got off the phone with them and they want to talk to you. And I need to get this straight because I know it had nothing to do with that. Something else was afoot there.
I wrote down a couple of things, but I'm going to bring up some comments in the chat here too. Emma the cat and friends. Today I woke up and door to my suite was unlocked and a pen was moved to a place I didn't put it. My pepper spray was in an upright position that I would never put it in. It freaked me out. And then my interdimensional exit buddy, we've been having crazy shit happening to here, disappearing, and she's not joking. We went to watch. We have a certain selection of movies in our bedroom on the TV that's in our room. There's a movie that we watch quite often. I'm not going to give props to anything, but I was just like, oh, let's watch that. It's gone. Right? It's almost impossible. It never leaves the room. It sits on the shelf by the DVD player. There's absolutely no reason for it to be out of the room, and we can't find it.
And there's no sparkling plastic shards in your dog's poo outside, right? So
no, none of that.
I mean, yeah, that's the kind of thing. I mean, I've lost things too, but I mean, it got to the point with my wife and OCD that I couldn't tell if she was doing it or I did it or somebody else did it. But yeah, that is happening too. Things are being moved on people. A friend of mine, they stole all of her childhood photographs of her mother and her family and her. And you know, she's moving around the country, kind of running from the whole situation, being stalked by agents and stuff like that. So she was taking the stuff with her in a small amount of her belongings. So it wasn't like, you know, it just got lost in the house. It was important. It was very important, actually. And she kept it close to her, and they got it. They got it when apparently, I guess she left for the day or went out, did something. And all of a sudden it's no more pictures. And I've heard that not just with that, but of a lot of different things, including putting things in your yard, putting things in your driveway, bringing things in, putting them in your house, just things to intimidate you, to make you fearful because they want you to think and want you to know that they can come in at any time and do whatever they want to you. And they want to keep you on edge. It's to get you to submit, obey, and go along with whatever they're trying to do so that they can take your power away and hurt you.
No, I totally agree. And I just want to circle back to what you were talking about at the pharmacy. And I just wrote down right to refuse. Like, are you at the stage that you have to get your fucking naproxen and just throw it out so you can get the medication that you need? Like, is it literally that controlled by this system that like you have to take these like, are they gonna come home and make sure Nate takes each one of his naproxens with his sandwich and has a drink of water with it and doesn't get an upset tummy? Like, how fucking far is this gonna go? This is ridiculous.
Well, they already have smart pill technology where they can literally put a chip in a pill and then monitor it going through your body and out your body, you know. So they've already proposed doing that. And, you know, that if you think drug prices are up now, why do they start putting nanotech in every one of your pills and capsules and caplets? And then the RF frequencies, you know, if you got to take like 10 or 12 medications, I take, I don't know, about 4, something like that. I forget exactly, you know, but, and some of them I don't take all the time. It's like as needed. So, but yeah, we are actually getting to that point. The thing is with this though, is that this is just an excuse because what's happening with it's a small pharmacy. So this is the legitimate answer here, but you know, how they went about it, in my opinion, is just wrong. Because if they didn't want my business, they could have told me. Every time I went in there, it was a small pharmacy, and every time I went in, it was as if they knew who I was. I never had to give them my name, yet other people did. And it was like they had it out for me. So I'd go in, and it was just like, we don't want this guy here, right? Because he's got a controlled substance. So because they do scrutinize small pharmacies, but and the Drug Enforcement Administration goes through these social experiments. Like 2 years of the reason I'm even at this pharmacy is because, and this is my fault, about 2 years ago, it had been in 2018, I failed a drug test for cannabis after two years after the medical marijuana law was passed. but it took the state 3 years to implement it because it was so restrictive. The businesses couldn't use their licenses to even operate. It was like, we're going to let you grow pot, but it's illegal to obtain it. You can't get seeds, you can't get plants, you can't get anything you need to grow it. If it falls out of the sky and in your hands, you can have it and grow it. It was stuff like that, and just restrictions where they couldn't even open their doors and even go operational. So it took 3 years of negotiations after millions of dollars are spent by all these companies. Investors had to sit on an empty building and then fight with this cannabis commission to make it a usable law so they could actually use their business license, and then they can pay taxes so the criminals can use that to go after people and make their lives miserable. They're certainly not going to use it for school books or anything and kids, like they say, like our gambling casinos here. And none of that money went to the kids. It went to the rich people. And it came out of the pockets of all the state employees who spend their whole paycheck there, So from USA to the casino, back to the bank, it's a big circle. So, but anyway, yeah, the reason they didn't want me there is because, it's a small pharmacy. They get scrutinized, but I would get, I would have multiple prescriptions, and I changed my doctor, right? Because my doctor suddenly refused to prescribe testosterone. I had 2 in a row do that to me. All of a sudden, you don't have a medical need. And yeah, I do, because they suspected I had tumors, so they removed my testicles, right? And this is, by the way, this was due to targeting. I was threatened with this before it happened. So, I got to use testosterone. So it isn't like I'm popping, like shooting steroids, but that's how they act when they get like, all of a sudden, I'm some musclehead who's abusing steroids. And it's just like, what are you talking about? I said, if anybody has a right to get this prescription, I do. And half the time I have to pay out of pocket because the insurance covers it, then it doesn't, then it covers it again. When a CEO gets murdered, suddenly I get more benefits all of a sudden. But after a while, everybody get comfortable again. I go right back to it, and I'll start losing benefits. So anyway, they didn't like the fact that I wasn't filling all my prescriptions. That's all really it was. And what was happening is I had 2 different doctors because I had to keep switching to keep my prescriptions. It was like, we're not going to treat you. We're not going to treat you. So I had to get another doctor 2 times. And then the third one I got, I literally, and this is how stupid it is, and we'll get to the crazy stuff in a minute if this isn't bad enough, but I had to go to a doctor that treats transgendered people, okay, in order to get testosterone prescribed to me and go through the red tape so that they would cover it under my insurance. Because every time I have to get a prescription, they need a peer-to-peer doctor review to see if my testicles grew back. But you see, so that's the lunacy here. And I think it's every 2 months or it's annual. I'm still working that out. But, I had to go through all that. And so, and I knew if they could get a biological male on estrogen and get it approved, I pretty much was a shoo-in. I think I would be grandfathered into this one just out of normal biology and the norms that we've been dealing with for who knows how long since the human species has existed. So, but I could be wrong about that. It's a new day. It's a new age. It's the lunatic asylum Earth. So yeah, that was more or less what it was. And I had like more than one doctor. And I had more than one prescription for the same medication. So they were just going for broke and like saying, and what they were doing was using my old doctors, calling in new prescriptions, renewals without me telling them anything. Meanwhile, I had a current one, and then they were filling all of it. So I had like 2 prescriptions of Naproxen, 2 anastrozole, 2 of this, like 2 of everything. It was like Noah's Ark, So then they got upset about that I wasn't buying all of it. I'm like, well, how much Naproxen do I take? And it was funny because I said, this stuff has side effects. I take it for inflammation when the pain pill doesn't go all the way. It can cause heart issues and stomach problems. My neighbor went to the hospital for taking her stomach bleeding, but she never went to the hospital for the opioids. But, and the guy's like lecturing me on side effects. And I'm like, who the hell are you to do this to me? And why are you in my business? So, that's the kind of nutty shit that I have to deal with. But anyway, yeah, they'll get theirs eventually. So probably Monday when I try to call the DEA and call his bluff. But, something else might happen before then that I have to tackle and take me off of that job.
So Spinja just posted something that I was going to bring up because it happened in more than one day, or one way rather. When I was in Ontario, I was receiving Ontario disability. I almost died in a motorcycle accident when I was 25. I lost an eighth of my left leg and I completely destroyed my right knee. In order to retain my benefits, because I couldn't work at the time, I had to get like almost continuous medical reviews to make sure that there was still 16 pieces of steel in my leg and that there was still a gaping hole in my left calf.
Right, your handlers could heal you and take and steal that steel from you, or that titanium. I mean, if they could take a movie, why not take the hardware out too?
Yeah, like it was just, and even to get my prescription refills, like you said, before I got switched over to weed, I got it just before it was legalized too. Um, I looked at my doctor. I'm like, look, I've been taking morphine and Percocet twice a day for 8 years. I feel sick from this. I can't do this anymore. And luckily, she was a little Asian lady. I'm like, can you prescribe me marijuana? And happy as a pig in shit to do it. Yeah, okay, I'll give you marijuana. But like, even when I was getting the controlled substances like the morphine and Percocet, I had to get a physical review every time. Well, do you think my fucking leg grew back? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, they were doing that here. It was like every 3 months you had to go through this review, but I wasn't able to get it back then. And oh, what happened? The reason I was going to that pharmacy, I don't know if I told the whole story, is because they passed this regulation, the DEA did, to where they were rationing the amount of pills that each pharmacy could actually sell. So it didn't matter how many people needed it. They just set an arbitrary amount, and everybody had to deal with it. So people were having car accidents and serious injuries in hospitals and having to get the drugs from the hospital because the pharmacy was already tapped out of pills. And then you weren't able to do mail order. And then they took and loosened that restriction. So you could do mail order, but then all those pharmacies filled up with requests and they were done. So I couldn't get a prescription filled. And then I got my insurance switched because I was pushed into the exchanges. And then after that, nobody was taking my insurance because they all took United Healthcare, just not my policy. So all the pharmacies, so I had like one pharmacy in a 100-mile radius, this little dumpy hole in the wall called Quarterfield Pharmacy, tells me I've got to get all my drugs filled there, and I got to get my hormones there too, because if I go outside, he'll find out that I got a discount, but he'll match the price, is what he said. But if he finds out I'm getting any drugs filled elsewhere, he won't fill my pain medication. Well, turns out I couldn't get my pain medication for 7 or 8 months because a 30-year medical history and 7 surgeries and a MRI from 2018 wasn't good enough. That was my last one. I had about 6 or 8 others from years prior, and all these surgeries, right? And all this history, they said because my medical history was over 6 months old, I'd be a new patient. Like I just got hurt yesterday. So now as an uninjured person with no medical problems, I have to apply for an MRI, which I was turned down 3 times. 3 times. And the one time I got turned down is I was going to get it, and they called in and said, don't give him to him, stop him. And they had to stop me from getting it, and I had to leave without it. So that's the kind of crap, man. And the lady told me, she goes, you're lucky. She says, we're actually lucky more than you because this happens all the time. And it usually happens after the MRI. And then we're stuck with going after you for the bill. So we just eat the cost. And she said, every month we lose about 30 grand in potential profits because the MRIs are rejected after they've been given for frivolous reasons. And then the person's like, you're kind of stuck. It's like, I'm getting a free MRI. How long do I want to fight to get the reimbursement if they're not going to go after me? So the company eats it. Then that reflects higher costs for you and then your insurance company. So you pay either way, you just get less.
That's wild.
Yeah. So
something else I wrote down when you were talking about how pushy the pharmacist or pharmacy was there. I know doctors get certain benefits for prescribing certain medications. I know the pharmacy was obviously getting paid, and you kind of got to wonder, was there something on the back end for them too? Like,
Well, he
Nobody
told me
makes money on healthy people.
he said your regular drugs, sometimes they actually lose money because they pay more than the insurance reimburses. And then there's other drugs they make more money on, so they have to balance it out. And being a small pharmacy, it makes it difficult to turn a profit, especially when they're constantly getting called to sell out to a bigger company. It's like they want to buy them up, and so there is no independent pharmacies. And also the drug companies, from what he told me, I haven't validated this, but he said the drug companies are buying the pharmacies and are merging with it, and they're all becoming these big conglomerates. So that if you're independent and you're not part of that arrangement, you're going to lose money just by filling prescriptions, because the small pharmacy doesn't pay the same amount as the big chains do for the same drug. So the money he's losing on these other drugs, or he loses $1 or $2 every time he prescribes it, they're making money on that because they get it for a discount lower than what he can get. See, it's not only that, they're getting internal discounts and bulk discounts and whatever it is. So it's ridiculous. And they're squeezing him out, and then he's passing it on to me. And that, what my point is that it's all of the above when it comes to targeting, because it isn't just he's being targeted. He's being targeted. The system's weaponized. I'm being targeted. They're after me as a regular person, not a my lab. And then, of course, they're after me for being a my lab. So it's all the above. And that's where people get lost in the sauce, because they think everything that happens to them is part of this effort to get them, when a lot of it is just the fact that we live in a terrible, weaponized, corrupt system where people hate one another. They want to help each other. They want to cut each other's throats to survive. And the workplace, that's a joke. I mean, it's based in lies. Everything's a lie. Your resume's got to be full of lies. They're looking for people lying. If you tell them what you can do, they don't want you because you may take their job. So you got to lie and be stupid. It's like once you get a job, you feel like just after a few months and they're so happy with you, they don't want to let you have a day off. They're rewarding you with overtime being forced on you and more work, and they're never giving you a compliment. So I feel like going in and say, oh, by the way, all the references I gave you, all bullshit. What do you mean it's bullshit? Well, it's all bullshit because if I would have told you my real skill set, you would have never hired me to start with. Yeah. And I'm just here to tell you that. And by the way, I'm not giving you 2 weeks notice. I quit. And why not 2 weeks? Because do you give me 2 weeks before you fire me to let me know that I've got 2 weeks to find a job or to start looking? Give me a 2-week head start? No, you kick my ass right out the door. But you want me to tell you, give you 2 weeks? I don't think so. Never again. I'll never again get sentimentally attached to a job, to a person somebody I work with maybe, but not the supervisors, not the company heads, not anybody that's making decisions over me that can do this to me. I'm going to treat them like they treat me. It's a business transaction. I don't care if your business goes out of business because I walked off the job, because I'm going to look at you and say the same thing you'd say to me. Sorry, it's just business. You sold your soul for $1. You're a soulless, empty vessel, and I'm going to act the same way to survive the shit show with you. Tired of you cutting my throat. I'll do the honors this time. Thank you. And I'll cut yours. I've had enough. I really have. And it's bad enough that we have to deal with all this, but then you have to deal with that. Preventing you from working, getting health care, just being taken seriously, being treated with dignity and respect. I'm sick of it. I speak for a lot of people, not just TIs and my labs. I speak for everybody in the system, but most of the people seem to be content with
it. I see it, man. I see it every day that I go to work. I'm going to bring up a couple of things here. Tennessee, Kentucky, Bigfoot, very wise words. All systems ran with money is destroyed by greed. And then again, my interdimensional exit buddy, when you were talking about the price lists of things, after that motorcycle accident that I mentioned during one of the reconstructive surgeries, I went to one of the top sports medicine people in Ontario. He actually works on like the major NHL team there and the baseball team, and he's that guy. And he's like, okay, so this, and this are the options for the surgery. So this here is the list, and this is the one that the government says they'll pay for.
Right.
because we have healthcare in Canada. There was 4 surgeries above what could actually have made my functionality better.
Yeah, that's
But
absolutely
this
awful.
one, this was where they were. That's our free healthcare here in Canada. You get number 4 on the list of procedures that could help you.
Yeah, that alone right there just blows the whole myth of this socialized or single payer healthcare is going to be better. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. It doesn't matter what version you have, it's all weaponized because the government, the politicians that create these policies, that administrate it, that they're supposed to be there to run it and to maintain it, are exempt from it. Anytime you have politicians that provide healthcare, even if it's private, because they're still administering the rules, they're still overseeing this. Anytime they're exempt from it, you can kiss your ass goodbye because you're not going to get real health care. You're going to get corrupt care. You're going to get sick care. They don't care because they get everything paid for. As far as I'm concerned, if you want a real healthcare system in this country, or any country for that matter, it can't be for profit, and the politicians can't be exempt for it. From it. They have to die at the hands of the same policies that they force on the rest of us. And I guarantee they're not going to let their kids, their little reptilian children and their reptilian relatives and all the other stuff mixed in with all the other human pigs and everything that are out there. They're not going to allow this type of thing to happen to them. So you will be protected because of it. But I think there's only one country that does that. I don't know if it's Norway or one of them, and I doubt if it's still being done. I would suspect that that they've ended that and the politicians are exempt. And as far as I'm concerned, unless it's Trudeau or your new prime minister, the president, the prime minister, the dictator deserves to have immediate health care access, except for Justin Trudeau and the new guy. And I can add a few more. But with those exceptions, that's the only people that I can see that should get anything special because they have to be able to do their job. Okay.
Yeah.
Parliament, Congress, and all this stuff, they can wait a little bit with the rest of us. I'll give them that. I'll take that concession too, but give the president or prime minister something special. But after that, everybody should be under the same policy and the same rules and the same access and the same cost. And you're not going to see that, and because the people are used to just eating it and taking it, laying down and not standing up for themselves. So really, and this is the truth, it isn't the politicians' fault, it's the public's fault. And I'll take a quote from George Carlin: "The public sucks, fuck hope," because it's the public that consents to this stuff. It's the public that has built this miserable empire of suffering through just laying down and taking it and giving permission and not questioning anything and just going along with it with this naive belief that because they're in charge, they've got your best interest and they're the best and brightest that we have, because they wouldn't be there if they weren't. And you're not going to get academics to go there and do any better because they're completely brainwashed. That's a whole nother arm of the propaganda. That's the people that sell you the lies to condition you to go into society to be a slave in the first place, after they saddled you with huge amounts of student loan debt to lock you into a servitude sort of situation where you have to literally pay off interest and debt before you've even got a viable job that pays enough to live on, if you can ever get one. Oh, but there is a solution. Suicide pods, right?
Oh,
Suicide.
yeah.
Don't they have those in Canada now? So if you didn't get that top tier surgery, or you got some credit card debt with front loaded interest, and maybe you just sprained your ankle at work and you're never going to get help for it because there's a 7-month wait, or maybe you broke your neck and you didn't get pre-authorization to get so you're going down. Yeah, you can get a suicide pod that's, by the way, made of biodegradable plastic and recycled materials. So it's green, it's dead, and it's the way to go.
It's interesting you bring that up, because my friend, who does have a sense of humor, we call him Cheech. Well, actually, he might be joining us tomorrow on that. He says his farts are covered, but the whole thing that you were just talking about, the suicide
but they melt snowflakes, so you can't fart either. You got to hold it in.
The whole thing about the suicide thing is Cheech actually needs a double lung transplant. He's in the process. And they offered him the pod. He kindly told them to go fuck themselves. But that was their, don't wait on a transplant list. Do you want to die? Like, that's my best friend. I think you guys are cocksuckers. Pardon my language, but
They're evil. They're
yeah.
absolutely evil. And people were conditioned to look at this and say, oh, it's about time we had that option. I mean, they're going to give it to kids who are depressed and get bullied in school.
Yeah.
They're going to give it to a child who was sold a transgendered surgery that went wrong, and they realized it was a mistake, and it was that they were influenced by the social contagion, and they made a mistake that's permanent, and now they don't want to live. So now the pod is available for you. You could have a condition that could be easily cured, need surgery, whatever it is. They're not going to pay for it. They don't want so therefore the pod is for you. And just one last bitch and gripe, and then we get on to the other type of sadistic things that they do to us. But I really, this abortion argument has gotten so old, and I'm so tired of hearing it. They only keep it in the state that they keep it in. And that's the way it was before. Now it's a little different, but they always keep this problem with abortion going. So they have a wedge issue. It's like gay rights and gay marriage and all this other stuff. We could just get it all straightened out and move on with ourselves. But no, they want to keeping it there and keeping it. It's like keeping a fire burning. Okay. Because they need a wedge issue. So they have to sell you on abortion. So you'll sell out all of your other interests just to be on the abortion bandwagon. And it's usually people that can't have kids anyway because they're too old and they're worried about rapist babies and things like this, So, I mean, and my problem is, and we can argue all you want about it. Okay. One side says, let's abort everybody and save the earth. Let's just get rid of everyone. There's too many people. And then, they have no value in human life, including their own, because they're not talking about aborting themselves. They're referring to somebody else. And in their mind, it's usually a poor person, somebody that doesn't need to reproduce in their mind. Well, who are they to pass judgment on them? Those people are sick, genocidal monsters who have absolutely no value for human life. Those who really think that way. I'm not talking about somebody who's just pro-choice. That's different. I'm talking about the sickos, the real hardcore people, the Satanists out there that see this as some sort of sacrifice. And you see them at abortion protests, they get like some really wackos out there you can find. And then you got the good old Christian conservatives, right? The ones who just don't want to see any abortions no matter what. And you can say, and they call themselves right to life. And they're like, okay, that's a good position to have. I have a lot of similarities there, but you go too far with it. But the problem is, it isn't even that they go too far with it, because if they went too far with it and everybody gets to live in the prison, then what happens after you're born? Because according to these people, and I'm talking about the majority of them, probably 90% will tell you that's a tax liability as soon as they're born. If they can't go to work and pull their own weight, they deserve to die. They don't deserve welfare. They don't deserve health care. They don't deserve anything. They deserve prison if they step out of line. I'm more than happy to send them there. But when it comes to getting them a job, getting them an education, and taking care of them, when their parents won't, oh, don't push that on me. I don't want nothing to do with it. And to do anything, oh, that's communism and socialism. We can't have that. I think this is what we need. We need to have a constitutional amendment in this country before we lose the Constitution. So let's add another one. Let's make a constitutional amendment to protect children. Instead of making war a priority, our children should be the priority. Okay. Second should be all of us. Okay. Because we're all valuable. Not bombs, not guns, not all this shit that they're doing to the world to blow up things and rearrange the global chess game for their corporate masters and their ET masters. Let's focus on the children and make sure that when you're born, you have a right under the Constitution, the Charter, whatever it is, your Bill of Rights, that you're going to be protected because we have a shared interest in your survival and well-being and success, instead of this bullshit we're dealing with right now. I'm sick of it. So, for these religious people that don't want abortion, then they need to step up and take care of the person after they're born and stop being liars and hypocrites, because I'm sick of it. Either put up or shut up. Okay. And the same with the other side. But I don't want to get too far into this. We're probably going to have this video taken down for medical disinfo or something. God forbid we bring up toothpaste or something, or cavities. That's what took Rob's channel down partly.
Yeah, that was some bullshit too. I'm just gonna say that flat out, and I hope he does get his shit back, because that wasn't right. You cut him off at the knees, and I won't say the word again because I noticed my viewers went down like 3 times when I said the C word, and I apologize. I get rather testy about my best friend. But no, they did. They're of the same sentiment to me with the ones that took away Rob's channel.
Yeah, and I always thought evil had a scary voice. It has like it seems like it has a lisp now. It's like nerdy people basically are the mentally ill tyrants, and they sit behind these computers and are like, oh, we're going to censor this and censor that and censor everything else. So so I kind of had a theory. I posted this on Facebook today. It was not a theory, but an idea. Like, what if this would happen? So I put what's next, and I'll say it in code because we're going to say the C word. And I'm just going to say it as the C word. And basically what I said is that if the World Health Organization announced that the CVAX cured all diseases by killing the host, or by killing the patient, and that they recommended that everyone were to go out to get one again, there would be a huge surge in V sales. They would literally be under heavy demand again, because these people who don't think, who just follow directions, are going to get up and go to their drugstore and demand one, knowing full well it's going to make them sick. But hey, it cures diseases because I'll be dead and I won't know it. I won't know that I'm sick anymore. I mean, you could sell that. If you can sell a war, you could sell that. If you can sell the pandemic, you can sell that idea too. You can, if Hitler can sell what he sold to the people, you can sell this. So, and they're going to sell a lot more to you too, because, they're going to try to plug you into an AI system and monitor your thoughts. And, people are going to go for it. They can't wait to get the junk in their head.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That freaks me out. Like, we're talking about pods. Like, I see it when I'm in the city, like the people with the glasses on and their heads in their phone. Like, I saw a family of people in a car today, and not one of them was interacting with another human being. Every one of them had buds in their ears and a face in a screen. And I was like, holy we're there. Like,
right now you're going to see somebody driving a self-driving car. They're just going to have a phone in front of their face, and then the road and the steering wheel, but the car's going to be going by itself. The kids are looking at porn in the back. The wife is looking at something, and he's looking at porn or Facebook, and there's no intimacy anymore. There's no love. There's just, let's pay bills and cohabitate and eat junk food and watch TV and look at this phone all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that are going to be the first with their hand up to crawl into the freaking Matrix pod too. Since we're probably going to get in trouble anyway, let's black goo infected shots, graphene version of black goo. I figured let's fucking go for broke. I'm already going to get in trouble. So,
well, I don't know. Are you serious? But we can try to speak in code. But anyway, I was crushed today because Facebook, I found the cure for cancer. It was 2 types of horse dewormer and a fabric dye. And then 3 or 4 posts later, I found out that all those things are infested with nanites, and they're all weaponized, and they're all going to kill me. So let's not touch any of that. We'll just take the cancer now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's like that. It's like constant. It's like, Facebook is just, if you were to take somebody from another planet and hand them a phone, first thing they'd say is that thing's pumping out horrible radiation. And it's like, well, here, put this suit on and look at it. And then, they'll stand there and look at it, and they're like, this is garbage. Why do you look at this? This is like, I can see this for what it is. Can't you? Like, oh, no, there's eye bag cream in there. And look, I can take this pill and it'll make my hair grow back, or I can take this pill and make my hair fall out. Well, look at this. I can lose weight without dieting. Just take this shot.
Yeah.
you know, and
Uh,
it's all this stuff. They're selling you drugs, they're selling you all this stuff, and then they're feeding your head full of nonsense. And then if you try to make a statement to make the world better, they shadow ban the crap out of you. You're in an echo chamber. God loves you. Oh, screw that. We're not going to
yeah.
put that out there. And you
So,
put one that says kill white people. Oh, we're going to make this go viral.
so
Anyway,
somebody posted, in full disclosure now, and I don't know if you can see my phone. Probably not. No. It's basically, we have absolutely no idea why people who took 5 experimental, you know what, in 24 months are suddenly, you know what. And it's like CNN, Google, blah, 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 all a bunch of head projections. And I'll even share this. I already shared it on social media, I think. Uh, right underneath of it, College of Medical Laboratory Technologies of Alberta, when lives are at stakes, rules save lives. That's the ad right underneath the full disclosure.
yeah.
And it's like, wow, no, you guys aren't in control of this at all, are you? No.
Now it's just everyone's trying to do the right thing, Don, and you know those conspiracy theorists out there they need some psychiatric pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
You know those won't be denied, and they'll prescribe those to you.
Possibly a lobotomy.
Well, yeah, I mean there should be a pill for that. Probably is coming. It's probably on its way. They'll
Yeah.
probably have a shot for that. Actually, they did. The Pentagon actually created one or was talking about it. It was to stop religious fanaticism in the Middle East. They were going to weaponize a flu virus to literally destroy the part of the brain that shows the most activity in an EEG when somebody's shown the Quran or the Bible or some other holy book. You know, so it was a strategic lobotomizing flu virus. And the guy that leaked out the video of the presentation at the Pentagon got like life in prison or something over it. And somebody was there in the audience, like sitting in like a row ahead of him, and he says he had a question, and he says, "Well, he goes, how's this going to be deployed?" And he says, "Oh, it'll be a flu virus, with most likely with a vaccine." Yeah, we know how good those work.
Yeah.
So, but hey, I mean, I don't think it would have made. I honestly think they probably already did this with people. I really do. I think that they took that idea, they developed it, and they put it into the medical procedure that everyone's supposed to take to flatten the curve and save a life and all that. And you
Yeah.
could see it. I've got a friend who's a museum curator. He's like does all this research, right? After taking that, he's not himself. He's just turned 65. He's partially retired, but he gets a very bewildered look on his face when I talk to him, and he never had that before, and it's worrying. I don't think other people are really seeing it because they're not engaging him in an intellectual way that he has to think of something new versus something he's always talked about. And I can just see it. And, you know, and when he tells me that he's afraid to drive his car because he can't see and he won't get glasses, and he says that when he's done, when he can't see to the point where he can't drive, he's just going to walk. And like, your wife needs you to drive. Your wife needs you to be active and engaging in your marriage and doing things and helping her take care of the house. How are you going to do that? And it isn't clicking. And I just see this far away look in his eyes and this bewildering stare that my grandmother got before she died when she had really bad dementia. And I'm seeing it. And this guy was sharp as a tack. There was, you know, I could tell him pretty much anything, even if he didn't want to hear it. He'd at least understand it to a degree, or, you know, to some degree. I'm not even reaching him anymore. And I'm seeing this, and I go out in the public, and, you know, you can't really tell because you don't know the people, but, you know, there's just a general change in the public. I mean, it could be subtle, but people are noticing it. The ones who especially didn't do the procedure. And I think what it does, man, is it detaches you partially from reality. I think it cuts you off from your intuition. I think it attacks the parts of your brain that are responsible for spirituality and you know, connecting with your sixth sense and so forth. I think they just wanted a totally dumbed down robotic population, and the ones who live were going to be used in that way, and the ones who don't, you know, I guess their genes didn't fit with the program, and, you know, it just got rid of them, or some of our experiments didn't work out.
I and I don't mean to sound weird about this, but I can actually see it in people's complexions now.
Really?
Like, I can tell I'm pretty dead on. Like, I can see something in the skin tones now for people that have done it multiple times.
Is it kind of like a lack of pigmentation, like kind of like when you see somebody that's like baked in the sun and they get really sick with skin cancer and then they kind of like shrivel away, but their skin gets pale, but they look pasty and gray? Is it kind of like that?
It's that pasty sheen, yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen that with some family members that have gotten it. And of course, nobody wants to take my advice. Oh, Nathan, don't believe what you hear on the internet. I'm like, it wasn't just the internet. I actually read medical literature. This technology never made it out of trials because it killed the lab animals. That's why it's emergency authorization. It's like, come on. You know, oh, the government loves me. They're not going to do that. My favorite president's in.
Hey, the puppet I voted for won. I'm not even getting into that shit. No.
He took a placebo. It's safe.
Yeah.
No. Oh, yeah. It's really bad, especially when your kids take it. Like my son took it, man. My son took that, and it was like that was it. It was like they took what I was trying to protect away from me when that happened. I can't control other people, but you have a responsibility. And when you realize that, they're 18 and they're going to do what they want to do, and you were looked at as the pariah in the house. You're the one that has all of these crazy ideas and says crazy things and has no credibility, who always turns out to be either right or mostly right, but it doesn't matter because we don't want to believe that any of that exists. I sat there with a friend and I told him about the child trafficking. I said that the human trafficking going on. I said they're doing it, the military bases are doing it. I laid it all out, and he kept talking about collecting coins. This is a man that was furious over a map. I'll use the politically correct terminology. A map that was stalking his cousin over an anti-map bumper sticker on her car because she was molested by a map. So she was raped and molested by a map. So she put an anti-map sticker on her car, and this map was actually parking behind the car doing YouTube podcast about how she needed to be dealt with. And the police wouldn't do anything with this guy until multiple people went on a phone call campaign and had his YouTube videos taken down, which took about 2 weeks. And all of this, and then for the whole year, my friend, that's all he talked about. But now when I talk about things that have happened to me or others and what they're doing to these people, they're doing to kids and everything, it's just like, I'd rather talk about coins. I don't want to believe those things exist. So it's like you can take a medical procedure and now you have a make-believe reality that you can plug into. It's like, it's okay now. I don't have to be in reality. I am medicated.
Yeah.
I'm permanently medicated with an experimental gene therapy. Get out of my way because you're negative and you're a conspiracy theorist. I want to watch old westerns and sit back and watch the Three Stooges and talk about coins when the world's burning. So I'm frankly, man, I get to the point where I don't have any use for anybody anymore. It's just like I didn't want to leave the house because I got to deal with this stuff. Anyway, let's talk about our screwed up community, all right? Yeah. We're under siege all the time, because they want us to shut up. They've got these horrible programs going on. So anybody that wakes up and comes around to a little bit of it and starts talking, they get pummeled. So what does that comment said?
Oh, I'll pull it back up here. Definitely know the feeling when is a conspiracy not a conspiracy anymore. These folks will blindly be led into oblivion. Then it is too late. And that was blue.
We could be there now.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, from a logistics standpoint, or however the correct military terminology was, if we were going into war, we'd already consider ourselves defeated at this point. Because they've just gotten every 80%, 90% of them. We don't even know what the true estimates are on there, but the majority of people took it, and they took it with pride, and they took it with an F you to anybody that said, "Don't take it, I love you." Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. My sister and mom as well. My sister, because she's a public educator, she took one,
so do my
and
mother.
I went to visit her, and she's not happy about it. She basically looked at me with the "don't judge me" look, because she poured her life into being a public educator, and they handcuffed her and said, "Do it or lose everything." And
Yeah.
away she went, right? And now that's with her for however long.
Something else that I've noticed too is the people that lack spirituality seem to be worse off, and they're, in my opinion, mentally. The ones that I've talked to, my mother is pretty spiritual. She took it. She took, I think, two, maybe a third. I think it might have just been two. And she came down with an asthma condition. She was having trouble with and she's like around 70. She's going to be at the conference, by the way. So everybody who's going to be there, we get a chance to meet my mother. But so she got something that very well could have been from that. And she's a nursing professor, so she could have taken a religious exemption, but she couldn't work in the ER with the students. They'd have to put her on some other administrative stuff. She didn't take it seriously. Her pastor said, "Don't do it. He's the mark and all that." She didn't listen to him. I mean, she just went ahead and did it. And now she's regretful that she's done it because, I worry about her because this could be a ticking time bomb, but she's doing okay so far. My younger brother was obsessed with it. He got his kids done, his wife done, and all that. Luckily, they haven't had anything wrong that I've seen, so keep my fingers crossed. But I know somebody that had a stroke and went blind in one eye, fell down in a Walmart. Nobody would help him because they were afraid of getting sick. He crawled out. He literally crawled to his car and then went to the hospital. He's still taking it. If you bring it up, he starts screaming. I mean, like, "Get the F out of here. I don't want to know what's in it, and I'm going to keep taking it, and F you." And he, like a total lunatic. It's like, boom, the light bulb goes off, and he's crazed, right? So there's that guy. You got my other friend that was having this dementia issue, probably due to prion buildup. He's got issues, and his body goes septic. He's had 2 incidents in the hospital where he's went septic, and it looks like athlete's foot, and they can't culture anything, and they just ride it out. And they were talking about potentially amputating his foot. He may die from sepsis. His immune system goes haywire and attacks his body, and it attacks his area on his foot where he had athlete's foot over and over again from buying flea market shoes. It's like, why are you buying flea market shoes? I mean, you could buy some of the cheapest Chinese stuff, and it's same as what you're paying. At least while they're outgassing, you won't get athlete's foot.
And yes, Emma the cat and friends, I believe he was talking about the Full Disclosure Conference in July.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not allowed in any other ones. I'm like a bad influence on everyone, so they don't invite me to those. But especially to speak, they're not going to have me speaking at some of these other ones. My God, he's against the mind control, man. Did you hear what he just said? We should be upset about this. Get him out of here. Anyway, let's talk about that. So,
yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah, this is the juicy part, man. So, we're a community. We're trying to get the truth out. We're trying to save each other, and we're under attack constantly. So what you have done, as you know, is you have all of these people that are compromised by these military programs coming together, which they don't want. Everybody's being monitored neurologically. They're being remote viewed. Everything is being watched. Everything we do, our telephones, the cell phone, the landlines, the computers, everything's being monitored. They're collecting data on everybody, and they're monitoring us in ways that we don't even know about yet. Things from satellites and so forth, whatever. The ETs have their transdimensional AI grid system that keeps all of us monitored and tagged, and they know where we're at, because we're basically the enemy asset that they're using in the spiritual prison. So we're in this situation like that. So what do you want to talk about first? You want to go into attachments and things, or do you want to talk about subconscious programming and triggers and things where you can actually lose ground with your abilities simply because of a say an emotional issue. Is that because I figured a lot of things out since we last talked, at least from what I'm going through. I know other people can relate.
I would like to get into the abilities thing if we can off the start,
Sure.
because that's something I wanted to touch on too, is like, before you get too far into it, do you think that there's punishment for misusing or overusing the abilities that we remember how to use? Like, do you think there is somebody that will, well, I don't have another word, punish you for like remote viewing or using telekinesis or telepathy or whatever, like Big Brother pee slap, basically?
Absolutely. It's like, that happens all the time. Now, if you misuse them and if you're influenced to misuse them, or they co-opt your misuse, so you're attacking someone in the community, we've seen that happen. Of course, they're gonna like that because it causes harm and it causes problems. So probably not in those cases. A lot of times those people are influenced to do this type of thing, and what abilities they've got, because some people actually get abilities for serving the system inadvertently. They may be used as an influencer, and they start they have a very easy time regaining these abilities because they use them in such a way that the program handlers can take advantage of. So that's one possibility there, that happens rather frequently in this community. But as far as them like punishing you for doing things, that happens all the time. They'll obfuscate your remote viewing. Evie, excuse me, Evie Lorgan has a funny a term for this. She calls it reptilian reprisals. So, you go and do a podcast, or you help someone do something, or whatever the case is, or you become too psychically sensitive, and then the hammer comes down. You get the reptilian reprisals. But yeah, absolutely, they do. They use punishment as a deterrent, but their more effective way to get you is to shut you down. And trauma-based mind control is what it is. It's based in trauma, and the core purpose of it is to take you away from the original self. So in order to obtain these abilities and get them back, at least because you're limited by genetics, you're limited by a consciousness simulation that's everyone's under the influence of. Farsight Institute, they quoted something, I believe it was from Russian researchers. And from what I understand, Russian researchers and the whole Russian UFO MyLab community that we never even get a chance to even see or hear from actually has it a bit easier than us, because as far as the information from the government's more forthcoming with information. I don't know if this can be validated, but I heard this years ago. This was after the Russian space station was operational. There was a press release in Russia that I heard about secondhand through a U.S. article, that they admitted that there was something that they referred to as space plankton. Basically, it was like they had to clean the windows of the ISS because it would accumulate a film of microorganisms. So, you could say, well, it's close to the Earth's atmosphere. Technically, it's within a zone. But space has microbes, and that's something they don't want you to know about. But the Russian government saw no problem, apparently, with telling their citizens that space has microbes and that it's an ecosystem. Now, we'll never hear that here. They're still disputing these things. The Viking mission found bacteria in the Martian soil. And the guy that actually designed the test, who lived in Maryland, he's passed away now. He fought NASA for years, for decades, over his test because it showed the same bacterial content as a sample from the Atacama, which is referred to as Mars on Earth. It's in South America. It's a desert, and it's so high in elevation, the atmosphere is thin, and at the very most inhospitable parts of it, the highest elevations, the bacteria in the soil count is similar to that as the Mars soil that they sampled, because what they did is I believe they added a little bit of water and then into a soil sample, and then they waited and incubated it to where it would produce, if it had anything in it, it would produce methane or some kind of a gas they were looking for, some kind of like CO2 possibly. And they were able to determine roughly the amount, like ppm or whatever, in the soil, or however you do the count, whatever system of measurement that they use, but it was present. So they lied about their own test and said it was contamination without being, of course, they didn't have to prove that, but they said that it was just contamination. This couldn't be true. So now they're slowly telling us, and a lot of us know that there's life on Mars, and that there's a somewhat of a breathable atmosphere, because a lot of us have been there in these altars.
You kind of went somewhere that I've been lately, and there's a couple of things like exactly what you're saying. In order for that to exist in space, there has to be some type of atmosphere, some type of air, right? Because we're taught in material science in public school or whatever education you got that like space is an infinite vacuum, right? There's nothing in there. There's no explosions. There's no air. There's no life. The only problem with that on a fundamental level is that it's gaseous law. You can't have a pressurized atmosphere, i.e. Earth, next to an infinite vacuum, because without some type of structure, right? It either would have to be energetic or physical, but you can't have the two next to one another. So part of this story, one way or the other, either we're in a dome or there's air in space and somebody's full of shit. And
Well,
I would lean more towards the air in space, because the sun, you need air for burning.
Are you
Right?
familiar with extremophobes? I think
No.
that's the correct term. This is I think this is the term. I'm trying to remember back from a college course I took in microbiology. But I think it's called extremophobes. They live in the vents. The first time they found them that I know of is there's vents in the ocean floor that put out like a very hot, and what comes out of them is usually toxic. It's volcanic stuff. It's from the earth, and it's very hot. So there's actually microbes that live there. They've actually found microbes living inside the Fukushima reactor, literally living in that radiation. And actually there's microbes that we don't even know exist that are in such extreme types of conditions. They thrive in these conditions because life is designed to live everywhere. So there's not air in space, but what it is the microbes are able to travel through space in a state where they're dormant. When you get close to the ISS, you're near the Earth's atmosphere, so you have some type of nourishment there going on, and they're able to kind of like congregate and build up and reproduce a little bit and create a film on the window of the space station. So it isn't like there's an atmosphere in space, but basically you have life that is capable of living out there and living under extreme conditions and zero. I mean, like for example, anaerobes, for example, don't need oxygen to reproduce. They don't thrive in an oxygen-rich environment. Aerobic bacteria do, but anaerobes don't. So if you have a hydroponic system, for example, and you don't have, and it's very closed up, it's stagnant in there. There's no oxygen going into the roots. It's and it's warm, and that pushes dissolved oxygen out. Anaerobes thrive, and anaerobes don't protect root systems of plants. They break down organic material. They're nature's trash collectors. They're the cleanup crew. That stench from a swamp is anaerobes, because there's very low oxygen in there in certain spots in that muck. So that these things are designed to eat and break down organic material, and they have a purpose. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a functioning ecosystem. So extremophiles are out there, and it pretty much is what seeds everything. There's different. It's all. I mean, there's science recognizes this to a degree, but because of the alien cover-up, the extraterrestrial cover-up, they don't want to talk about it. So, there's something called panspermia. There's something called directed panspermia. Directed panspermia is basically terraforming, and it's you're directing microbes, and you're moving things, and you're doing things to create an ecosystem. That would be seeding life, would be directed panspermia. You definitely don't want to talk about that because that's what the ETs are doing. I would say most life in the universe probably came from genetic engineering at this point than something that evolved or was created. Because once the genetic engineers get going with their craft, they don't know when to stop, and they'll just keep going on and producing new life forms and just experimenting and learning to refine their ways so there's less suffering. Of course, unless you're a self-serving negative group of ETs that don't care one bit if something suffers, you'll do anything that you can possibly imagine to get whatever end you need to achieve. The means have no limit, so you can do as much horrible, miserable things to any living thing just to get the outcome that you're desiring. And that's what you see in these military programs with people like us and what they do and what they do to everything. So so that's kind of the situation there. But getting back to the mind control, what would you like to talk about first? You want to talk about attachments? Because actually you wanted to talk about losing abilities. So
yeah, 1 second.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna Marty Price. I'm guessing he probably came with you. Take the moon of Jupiter, for example. Europa is spitting out geysers regularly, and it could be supplying microbes to the entire solar system.
Yeah, absolutely. And the sun pumps out neutrinos as well. And there's particles in space that are being constantly hitting the planet. And I've watched a program where the planets actually gradually get bigger because they collect material. So, when you see something that gets it starts out, it's on the surface and then it's below ground and it's deep in the ground, the earth, isn't just because there's dirt moving around. That's happening too. There's natural processes, but the planet is actually being bombarded with particles that stick and make it through the atmosphere, and it builds it up. So if we're living on dirt that's everywhere in the universe, okay, then it's insane to say that there's only life right here. But that's what they'd like you to believe. I think, and this is my hypothesis, there is no intelligent life on Earth. And that's what I think. I think that we can all agree on. Because if you listen to these people talk, it's clear and obvious there's not intelligent. Well, let's be honest, there is intelligent life, but it's not running the show.
No.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is not an intelligent man from the perspective of an extraterrestrial. It's just like, he's basically a clown, a spokesperson for the system. He represents the type of thinking that they want you to stick with, the computer simulation.
I completely agree.
What do you think happens, Don, when you take on the idea and you believe it like a religion that we're in a computer simulation? I mean, the first thing that would probably go is the value of life and the value of your own life and the meaning of it. Because if it's just simply binary code in a processor and we're living an illusion and we think we're here and we're not, we're actually a video game or a program. We're just electrons flowing through a circuit board and we think we're alive. And then, well, how do you substantiate? Well, where did the computer come from? Is that part of the simulation? Well, no, not really. It's part of this simulation, but it's actually a product of another computer. Really? So it's like the dog chasing his tail. There's never an end to how many nested computer simulations. It's an infinite number of nested computer simulations, one inside the other. So, we could be the one where the kid's picking his nose and he's playing video games and we're all characters. And that's how they like to reduce our value of life,
Yeah. I personally don't think it is a simulation. I can't articulate what I think it is, but I believe it's a form of projected consciousness onto an infinite plane of atoms or molecules or whatever you want. And it's a self-forming thing. And everything that's developed in this reality throughout time has been from an original consciousness that has created this reality. And we create everything around us with our own energetic projections. But that's just where I look at it.
Yeah, I have a saying that I came up with, and it's like, you put it on Facebook, you'll get a couple of friends who will say, good idea, thank you. but it'll never go viral. You know, it's like reality is God's dream, and we are nothing but thoughts in a never-ending story. And then I add another sentence onto that, and I say something. I don't really have a specific sentence, but it varies every time I do it or every time I say it. But the point is that now, while that makes it sound insignificant, just a thought that can be forgotten, you have to remember that God's self-awareness is just a thought too. Meaning that we're all eternal, we're all consciousness. Whether there's an infinite mind thinking of us or not, it's also reflecting and seeing itself. So we're made of that same consciousness fabric. So once we exist, we're eternal. We're all stuck with each other. And if you think about it, the only thing that really keeps us going, the spiritual lubricant here, the spiritual oil that keeps the gears going, is actually love. It's what creates things. It's what gives things value. It makes it literally is the creator's energy. And in this world, it's like probably the rarest commodity you ever find. It's rarer than gold. It's the gold of the soul. It's the fabric of our reality. It's what makes this worth being. And it's the one thing that they want to constantly at war with, to take it away. Every day on the television, every day on the radio, every day on the computer, and everything that you take in is absolutely positively in opposition to that in one form or layer or way or another. And, all you have to do is to have a fresh pair of eyes and a new perspective based in love, from the heart-centered perspective, to see that. And when you do, it'll make you sick what you're looking at, and you'll realize that the things that you just had no problem with prior, that are, because of conditioning, now really do repel you. And you see how toxic everything is, and then you start to see why people act the way they do. And most people, when I was in traffic today for several hours, when I should have been a regular ride, it was like an extra hour plus going one direction and back. And I'm looking at everybody stressed out, beeping their horn. I'm in traffic, stop and go. And I'm like, this is why nobody can figure out what's being done to them. This is what everybody's doing while we're being systematically wiped off the planet, enslaved, poisoned, abused, all of it. And I thought about the wars, and I thought about everything that they're doing. And I thought about how many minds in every one of these cars tied up in this rat race, trying to get back and forth to work just so they can pay more debt interest and just get through the following week, because most people are on the verge of total destruction. All they need is a fender bender. And every day, chance and bad decisions take out quite a few people going back and forth to work. Not everybody makes it home, and not everybody makes it home with their car intact, which could be a total disaster. It could be the end of their employment, the start of their homelessness. And that in a lot of cases, friends and family can't afford to help you, and really will rather blame you than face the fact that they can't help you and feel guilty. So they'll put the fault on you because it feels better. Why? Because somebody would do it to them, and it's just the way everybody does it, and it's the way we're conditioned. And they sell it back to themselves as tough love when it's absolutely the opposite of love. And we're conditioned to think that's the appropriate thing to do in some cases, but sometimes it is.
Yeah. It absolutely is like that, because I know Spinja had her accident, and we lost 20 grand on that one.
Yeah.
Right. There was the 14 that we put in, and then we owed the insurance company. So 23,000. We owed the insurance company 9 grand after we lost our $14,000 we had paid. Right. Like, it was just like, nope.
And finding a used car today is a treasure hunt, because everybody's trying to get one, because nobody can afford the new ones. They've put too much tech into it to the point where it breaks. It's expensive to fix, and it's impractical. I don't need a car that drives itself. I don't need a car that doesn't have a key. I don't need a car that does all these things for me that I don't want it to do, that it does on its own, that I have to try to figure out how to stop it from doing it. And it costs me money. And then I go for an emissions test. They don't test the emissions. They do a safety inspection. If my tire pressure is low, I got to come back. Or if some little sensor, or if my radio is not working right, your stereo's has a code in the computer, you failed inspection. I don't listen to music. Don't care about it. My car's safe. Oh, sorry, you got to get your stereo fixed.
Oh yeah, you have to take components out now to change a headlight.
Yeah.
Like, no, that should be reach in, pop the bulb, pull it out, take the thingy out, put it, twist in the new one, put it back, screw it in, you're good.
Yeah, you got
That's
10
not how
grand
it
of
is.
emission stuff here. You got to move out of the way.
Yeah. Something I wanted to ask you about, because you kind of alluded to it, was about all the distractions, like how you see all the people in traffic. Do you think, and I already pretty much know the answer, but I just want to ask for the audience, do you think that the distractions that we're spoon fed over and over again is key to being able to control us as a species, like as humans, right?
Absolutely. From the top down, it's like that. I mean, and it's the thing is that I've noticed too. It's usually, because I said this today to myself. It's like the only people left to kind of point out of what's going on are the ones that are marginalized in the system, who are struggling, who have more time on their hands, or being targeted like I am and others, to where they see the ugliness, they see what's going on, and then they try to tell everybody else, but they're too busy with their lives. So they've created a system where you automatically become in debt to the system. You're financially in debt at a very young age before you really have even established anything. The first thing you're supposed to establish is credit, and then, of course, immediate debt. In order to get more credit, you got to be in more debt. If you don't play the credit debt game, you can't buy anything. You'd have to pay cash for everything or pay full price. So, they immediately got you there. They get you, they tell you got to do this, this, and that. You got to go to school, go to college, or go to a trade school. It's to the point in this country where, doing any of those things is very difficult because of the cost, the debt, all of the struggles you have to go through. So, a lot of people immediately, that's why suicides are so high. People just can't handle this. This isn't made for a person to. We should have a society that nurtures people, that takes care of them until they can stand on their own, and then is there as a companion. Government should be a friend to you, not an adversary. It shouldn't be any of those things, but it is. It's a weaponized system. The goal is to control you. They plug you into this, and people think Santa Claus is Christian. Santa Claus is a manufactured advertising prop for the Coca-Cola company. Anybody that thinks otherwise is drinking the Kool-Aid or something else. But I mean, it's not Christian. It has nothing to do with it, but yet it's ingrained in our mind. So, and you start with something like that. That's like, and then they get you into the religious frame of thought, which is also used to control. The original Catholic Church was a government organization that worked with the Roman Empire, and it was like basically their CIA. That's why, confessions are there to simply get you to confess to the government. It's to get you to conform, and that's it. I mean, yeah, from religion to government, everything, the economic system, it is all a system of control. And then when you look back and you really kind of trace it, if you've been in these programs that have any intuitive memory or just cognitive memory, you'll know that the systems that we have here are based in these negative, self-serving extraterrestrial groups that are AI controlled. They're against free will. They're about breaking your will and getting you to consent. And they live under these same horrible conditions. They live under totalitarian, technocratic police states. And that's exactly what they're implementing here. And if you go back in time, just from what we can see in our own history, that's acknowledged. We see these gods coming down, these ETs coming down and portraying gods, and then ruling over us in like a dictator, in a theological dictatorship with alien stagecraft, building all of these pyramids and monuments, which then leads to the modern mainstream religious belief systems, which then have merged with politics, merged with the political system of each country to some degree or another, and they've used it to manipulate us. And then they bog you down with the social economic system, where you have social sanctions, you're in debt. It's a debt slavery system. So, and then they have weaponized healthcare. So it's all, we live in a prison system. It's a prison without bars, walls, and windows. We have the illusion of freedom, and it's sold to us as a commodity. If we can if we can do well enough and perform well enough in the system, then we can obtain a better position in it. At which point then that gives us the social collateral to go out and judge people who didn't make it as far as us, so that we, those who are higher up, not me, but those who are higher up in the system who could possibly change things for the better, they're conditioned to look at the people who are suffering under a system of inequality, which needs it to function. It's part of the entire design of the capitalist system, the socialist system, and the communist system. There must be inequality. There has to be a division of the classes. And because in communism, you have a ruling class. In socialism, you wind up with a ruling class, regardless of what the intent is or how it's, what the intent of those who put it into effect are. It always winds up that way. And you can't have those systems coexisting with capitalism, because capitalism always devolves to fascism or communism or socialism. It gradually just eventually slides to fascism in the end and becomes a totalitarian police state by design. Every one of our systems goes right to that final end, and then it collapses. None of these systems are designed to be sustainable. They're designed to build up, give you the illusion of freedom and choice, create a tyranny, strip whatever you had that your limited choices were, and then take them away, and then it collapses and people die and have to fight their way out of it to reestablish another burnt out, broken down system model, and then the cycle repeats again. So absolutely, man, this is a prison planet with a system put in place that is basically self-perpetuating and cyclic. It doesn't go anywhere. It just leads to destruction and renewal. But what comes back is no different than what fell apart before. It's part of the control.
I think you're absolutely onto something there, because like, even if you look in North America, we do have the three basic classes of people. There's poor people, there's middle class, and there's rich people, if you want to be general about it. And I saw a video recently. Poor people think they need money to survive. Middle class people strive to have money, to have credit, to have the best thing and pay for it the rest of their life. Rich people have figured out how to make their money make more money.
And to get everybody else to do the work.
Exactly.
Right. To make obscene amounts of money.
Yeah. And that's the system of it. And I don't even think, I totally dig what you're saying, because that is the reality that we live in. But I don't think that's the way this experience was originally supposed to be for humans.
No. I think this original experience doesn't even have the limitation of the five senses. Our baseline reality is not natural. If you look at animals, and you can look at trees, but it's, unless you're really psychically inclined, you're not going to sense something there. But you can look at animals and how they behave and how they work together in their social systems. Go into a forest and walk, take a compass or GPS with you so you don't get lost. Have a layout of the trail system and stuff. Go into a park or something. Go deep into the woods where there's nobody around and it's quiet. And as you go in, it'll be really pretty quiet. You just hear leaves and things and your footsteps and, a few birds or something. But then just sit there for about 15 to 20 minutes, like a hunter would. And how I know about this, because when I was younger, I was hunting when I was physically able to do it. And I found that there's a whole ecosystem and a complex social system all wound up into one in the forest. The animals are in total harmony with one another. They don't have language like we do. They don't have writing. There's not signs everywhere telling them where to go and what to do. But when you see deer together and you see squirrels jumping around, bugs, everything seems to be getting along and speaking its own language, and we're not able to pick it up. And it's because they're telepathic. And you can see, like, if you have predators and prey species, you can see that there's a difference in intelligence and in psychic ability with the prey. With the predators, they have the advantage over the prey animals, because if the prey animals could fully see everything that was going to happen, and they know they're going to get eaten, so they're not going to go there, and then that would starve the wolves or the coyotes or whatever, or the other predators. But it's set up in a system like that. It's kind of a hierarchy of consciousness. It's a hierarchy genetically and so forth, but it's a system, and they communicate with one another. And I've heard this before, and I've seen evidence of it, but there's not a lot of research on it because they don't want to talk about this. animals are psychic. You can see it in zoos. They've observed animals huddling together before an earthquake. So they can sense an earthquake coming, and we can't. So that should tell you something. What I was going to say earlier about Courtney Brown is that on the ISS, they were doing ESP experiments, and they found that the extrasensory perception was easier and more functional. People had more access to those abilities the further they were away from the planet. So the further they got out in the space, the more open or free they could, more accurate that they could remote view and things like that. Whatever they were doing, whatever experiments they were doing, they had an advantage by being away from the planet. So Courtney Brown was referring to it as he was calling it a psionic suppression field. And I call it the transdimensional planetary AI consciousness simulator. Yeah, transdimensional AI planetary consciousness simulation, or the consciousness simulation for short, basically. But so there's a field of energy that's localized to the Earth. It's probably some frequency hitting the magnetosphere that causes this distortion field, which limits our abilities. It makes it harder to remote view and harder to do all of these things. You combine that with genetic suppression, and you know that consciousness can affect genes. It can change your DNA. So and it can change reality. There's evidence of this. The skeptics will ignore it, but there's evidence of it. And so we have the ability to change things, and we have the ability to have some psychic abilities, but they've got a complete system that prevents that or limits it substantially. And what happens is that when someone breaks through that, they get abducted, taken into the government, the military, and experimented on or put into these programs where they abduct you, fracture your soul, clone you, and then they've got a version of you that they can do whatever they want to do with and make multiple copies of. Meanwhile, they've got you here under a suppressed state of consciousness as a prisoner in your own body. And and then, of course, when we come together and we start to figure these things out and we start to organize and start, conferences, podcasts, books. Prior to that, there was meetings and people talking and magazines and things like that, and TV shows, documentaries, and stuff like that. And, so we are basically a community of heavily targeted people because we can see through this artificial veil. We have a level of psychic ability that's above the normal level that everybody's in, and it's not normal, as I've just described. It's abnormal. It's not the true reality that we're supposed to be in. We're in a type of an augmented reality overlay that's being sold to us as a computer simulation to devalue human life and to create a new religion that the elites like us to participate in because it makes us completely meaningless. Who cares if it's a computer simulation? You can press delete, the entire hellscape goes away, and you can create a new one. Everyone who suffered is forgotten and they don't exist anyway. And what a great belief system for a prison like this. It's no different than the one that you're sold in the mainstream religion, that you live once, you go to heaven or hell, and that's it. And, there's nothing more to it. So don't question, believe in this or believe in that. If you don't pick the right religion, you're going to hell, apparently, according to the other competing religions. That should tell you something's wrong.
Yeah. It kind of always struck me as funny because a truly divine creator wouldn't torture his own creation. That's just...
No, not at
all. Before we get going, because we've already gone like 90 minutes, I really do want to get into the attachment stuff, though,
sure,
too.
Absolutely. There's just been a lot of crap. We needed some social commentary, so let's dive in. So what do you want to talk about?
I guess, what you had said is, it was actually off of your Facebook post the other day. Sometimes you figure out that the person you thought had an attachment is the attachment, and how to be able to discern, when a person has an attachment, what to be looking for, if they're the attachment or completely taken over by the attachment, that kind of...
Right. Well, what's happened to me recently is that, I've changed my perspective in a way I think, and that's really the key in kind of turning this around if you're in these programs. And I would say it's the key for anything, just waking up in general. The way the mind control works is that what they do is they take you away from your core self. So for those of us who are being exploited in these mind control, my lab related programs where they abduct you as a child and fracture you and so forth, is that we came to this world either put here as a prisoner in some form or another, or we came here intentionally to change the system from within, because there's an effort to do this, and it's been ongoing for a very long time since this place became a prison like it is. So there's been an effort to raise the consciousness, to raise the awareness by coming here. And people who come here, souls that come here, have the ability to see through this veil, and they see what's wrong with the world. Okay. And you could put, the person that was referred to as Jesus Christ in this same category, and many others. And the people in these programs too. I'm not putting myself in like a position like, where we're all like Jesus, Don. People might get upset with that, but the fact of the matter is we're all here to do the same thing. And people who wait for Jesus to fix everything, well, Jesus would tell you, I need your help to do it. I'm not here to just tell you what to do or wave my magic fingers and it all fixes itself like the Bible is telling you to do, or your preacher's telling you. You got to actually do this yourself. You've got to do something to change the world. So you've got all these people coming here, and then what they do is they suppress everyone. They suppress their consciousness. You get the mind wipe, but they have people that they monitor in bloodlines. So, you'd have psychically inclined people who would naturally incarnate in a bloodline because this is where they fit, or the military's putting people in and creating these bloodlines where they're just putting people in that they're assets. They're putting them into these families where they can monitor them. So that way they can keep all the abduction victims within the same group, and they can organize it instead of scattering them about, because they can use that. There's more things that they can do. It's like having a petri dish with every psychically inclined family that they can tap into when they need to for these programs. And for the people that don't get used in them, that have some psychic abilities, often they pose a threat to the system as just an influence or an agent of change, a good person in society. What they try to do is they'll put that person in a dead-end relationship with a narcissist, someone that's going to bring them down, someone with an addiction, someone who abuses, someone who uses, whatever it is, they will do that to those people. And then the other people who aren't pushed into drug abuse or toxic relationships and things like that, or pushed into a fanatical religious situation where they're kind of kept away from the true nature of their self and reality. Any number of things could be done and manipulated externally in what I would call an engineered lifetime. And then you have the others that get into the program. So then it's a hands-on mind control type of thing going on there. And in this community, we're going to talk about attachments. This is one of the ways that they control people. There are demonic attachments, negative spiritual beings that are parasitic. And essentially what they've got here, this whole earth, because people are shut down psionically, they're limited to 5 senses. It's a feeding frenzy. It's a feeding ground. It's a natural habitat with an artificial food supply that wouldn't exist in the natural scheme of things for these beings to congregate and infest. And they're here in mass to do this. So the military and these extraterrestrials that are running things utilize them for their programs to attack people. They'll do it on their own because that's like what a parasite does. A leech is going to suck blood. But if you can program that leech to strategically suck blood where you want it to suck, and then you've got a weapon system. So they use those types of things against us. And these things are attracted to negative thought patterns and emotions. You put out a beacon of negative energy on the astral, and just like blood in the water of the Amazon, you'll get a school of piranhas, and you'll get a school of basically AI types of entities that are synthetic, that are there to attach to you and alter your perceptions. And you'll get parasitic spirit beings that'll do the same thing, that are working for government military programs things that somebody like Michael Aquino would have been involved in the development of these programs, because he was the one that we know of that was there to take the occult sciences and fuse them with tech and make them to where you can utilize the tech, like occult type systems and occult magic in a weaponized way for military and intel purposes. So you have that going on. So you have a parasite, a spiritual parasite farm here going on, as well as a spiritual prison. So you literally get fed upon, and this is where all of these stories come from about you shouldn't get involved with the occult. You should, and really what they're saying is once you peek through the curtain of the wizard and see that little man behind there pulling levers, even before you even get to that point, just the intent sets the system off. The parasites converge and everything else. And if you're in these programs, they know that you're waking up, so they're monitoring you. So then they converge, and then the fun begins for them, but it's no fun for you. So that's where these attachments come in. And recently, through stripping away programming and things of that nature, by trying to make a serious effort to get back to my core original self, which was who I was before I came here in the first place, not who they made me as far as an alter. I see that a lot. It's important to know what they've done to you, and it's important to get these memories because it's part of the healing process. It's part of our collective responsibility to out these programs. Our collective effort for disclosure requires that we do that we integrate with these alters and we peel back the veil to find out what's been done to us so we can address it. And that's necessary. But really, the primary thing that everyone should be focused on, and this reverses the mind control, is to focus on who you were before you came into this world. Okay, this wasn't your first time. This isn't your first life. You've been here before. You've pre-existed this lifetime. You were there before. So you were someone before, and you may have been in the programs in another lifetime, but at some point you got into this. That's the version of you need to really focus on as your primary integration point, because that unlocks your abilities. It takes away the mind control, because the whole basis of trauma-based mind control is the disassociation of self. Okay, and that's the core of it. So if they can get you to believe that you're something that you're not, they can build an archetype in your mind, and then you will become that archetype and live that archetype's life. But they will take away your natural innate psychic abilities. They will take away your intuition. They will skew everything and control it. And you will be nothing but an empty vessel of who you previously were. That's the goal of this. And then as they strip all that away, they utilize that for their own purposes. So those innate talents that you developed over an endless eons of time are gone, and they belong to your alters in these programs. And you are basically defenseless and here to be psychically suppressed and brainwashed by the system. And heavily targeted. If you peek beyond the curtain, as I was saying, they come for you. So that's the core component of trauma-based mind control. And what you have to do is reach that original self. You also have to reconnect with God in that, because in what God is, as I've said before, people are looking for something external. It isn't. It's the love inside you, that energy, that connection that you have to everything else. When you start to go into that part of yourself, you start to heal. That's the gateway or the key to getting to that original self, because that original self was not devoid of love. It had that connection with God, the creator. It had that connection with everything. You're not the person you used to be, and that's what you need to be. So when someone tries to become this person where they have all their alters integrated and everything like that, but they've lost the core self, they're no better than anybody else who's just starting out, because they can be controlled and manipulated. And if they take the love out of your heart, there's no limit on what they can make you do to yourself and others if you let them. So it's extremely important to do everything in your life from a heart and love-based perspective. And that's a hard lesson to learn, because if you think about it, Don, isn't that what they don't want you to do in society? They don't want you to help one another. They don't want you to, to do things that are out of the norm. They just want you to just feed the system. the role models in our society, like for example, for young people, let's see, who would be a good role model for young girls as far as the music industry is concerned? Who do you think? What's that really weird kind of rapper, that female rapper that does like those whoop sounds? I think Cardi B.
Yeah.
Cardi B is like the role model for the youth of today, especially the young girls, and for those parents who are very religious and are concerned about morality and being wholesome. Then Adele would be the perfect example of what they would aspire their little girl to be. Because if any of those parents who are so concerned because of religious beliefs would actually listen, and I've heard people say this stuff about Adele, which is why I'm bringing it up. I don't think about these celebrities at all. They don't have any effect on my life, but I do peer out occasionally to see what they're being used for. And for a while, Adele was like the clean version of something your child could listen to. But then when you listen to the lyrics and you actually take the time, which the parents don't, it's depressing. It's broken relationships. It's psychological and emotional dysfunction. It's nothing to celebrate. It's not wholesome at all. It's just a packaged person. And for a while, she was sold as body positivity because she had a weight problem. Because she's eating the poisons that they're giving us in our food supply, she's not cognizant of it like she should, because if she was, she'd be eating like she's like a hunter-gatherer just to keep the weight off, which is what you literally have to do. You can't ingest this stuff. But it's just all part of the programming. I mean, we're getting sick and we're gaining weight and we're looking sicker all the time, but then they're telling us that this is a good thing, that we should accept our bodies because it's natural, when no, it isn't. You're poisoning us. The side effect is weight gain. So they glamorize it. And it's just like, wow, I mean, it's crazy. And there's even a rapper that sits up on a stage with an oxygen tank and an oxygen hose going into his nose because he's so overweight and sick that he can't perform without sitting down and being on oxygen. And then I saw him on Facebook and I looked at the comments and people were like, oh, that's great. It's like, no, it isn't. How is this great? This man he needs help. He's got an eating disorder. He may die prematurely in this state. So how could that be anything good about it? It's like, they're like, this is what happens. I mean, this is a pure idiocracy and far worse than the movie, because in the movie, nobody was trying to kill themselves. In this world, they're volunteering for it.
Absolutely. Something you touched on there, and I know Spinja is probably in the other room on the edge of her seat, hoping I will ask this, so I am going to, because it's a subject that a lot of people I've brought it up to tend to dodge, but you kind of went there yourself. Do you think, or know, that certain individuals are inserted into family bloodlines in order to alter the path of the bloodline itself? It basically, you implement somebody into a family that's going along very well, and it completely destroys the family or alters the course of it.
That could be a possibility. I mean, anything is possible. If you were to just envision how they would control bloodlines and families and so forth and individual people in them, yeah, this is done because, I mean, you still have, like I said, the narcissistic relationships, the abusive parents. I remember I have a MyLab memory that I had since I was a little boy. I don't even remember when it first came to me. I knew that eventually, over time, when I got in my late teens, I had flashbacks that filled in the memory, the parts that I had forgotten, and then added to it and provided more clarity. But I was literally in a lab and they were asking me, do you want to be white or black? And that was the only choice that I had. And I was protesting, and they put me in I got in this body. This is if I got this body from that, from that particular memory and that procedure. So, they know where you're going. It's all in a computer database. I remember watching the guy stand or sit. I think he was sitting. It was a terminal built into the wall, And there was a long, like an office desk, but it was just like a plank of like material, like some kind of like laminate material, but it was coming out of the wall. It was anchored into the concrete into the office wall. But and then he was able to look and literally find a family that they were monitoring, and then asked me, and I had a choice, white or black, and then I said I'd take white because of the social tension. So this happened at a time in the last 50 years, there's social, well, actually racial tension is what I cited. But they totally know where they're putting you. So yeah, any of those things would be possible. As far as changing the dynamics or direction of a bloodline, if it's advantageous for the program handlers, yeah, they're going to do whatever they want. I mean, it's social engineering down to the individual all the way out to society. And they have the tech to do it. They can alter time. They can do so many different things to you that, yeah, that's definitely, for sure, that's definitely going to happen. And I've talked to people too where, some kind of thing like that was going on, either not like a big turn, like, the family disintegrated or it went this way, but it was just their parents were handlers, things like that. And if the parents become handlers for the kids, and a lot of times they don't even know they're doing it. They are in the program themselves, or they're being remotely manipulated and they become a handler. All those things are possible. So absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say she clarified for me. My mom's brother married my dad's sister and introduced them. And the end result of that was my narcissist father my father was a narcissist and destroyed my mother. So like,
Right.
It really does seem like the father in this situation was brought in just to affect her mother.
Yeah, she's in a program, so yes, that could be done. Or even if you're not in a program, like I said, you could be on a reserve status where you have the potential to be used in the programs, but you don't fit whatever they're looking for, so they put you on ice and to control you, because they know that you have the potential to do things to influence people, so they're going to make sure that there's enough toxic things in your life to prevent you from doing much. There's enough narcissists in society and people with borderline personality disorder to give them all the tools they need to keep doing this indefinitely, because society is structured to which in such a way that it creates narcissists, that it creates people with damage. We get trauma all the time. I mean, every time you turn on the television, you're watching trauma in action. You're reporting on trauma. Most of your reporting is traumatic events, people suffering. That's what we call news. I mean, can you imagine, Don, living in a world where you turn the news on and it's all good stuff? Nobody gets hurt. There's no accidents. There's no bombs. There's no war. There's nothing going on that, that's anybody suffering with. But there's certain things that life is a struggle. But all of the reports are about people coming together and figuring it out and making it a better world and a better life. And it's happy stuff. They're telling you what you could be doing this weekend if you wanted to, and everybody has access. Just got to make time. Can you imagine?
That's the way it should be, but yeah, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. So we get to a point where AI is being developed, and AI has all of this promise to do all of these jobs that we don't want to do, such as your job and others and things. And you could have a machine, an AI, or some artificial intelligent system doing these things, and it makes life easier and it gives us more time for ourselves. But of course, we live in a prison, and the prison gang is the elites, and they run the prison. So the idea of AI is not to help us, it's to help them. They want it in our brains so they can monitor our thoughts, and we don't step out of line, so they can intercept us before we commit a thought crime, or as soon as we do. That way, nothing is actually done in reality, just in our minds, and we will be punished for that. And they're going to create a gulag system where everyone has no freedom, and that's what they want. And you're either going to be working like a slave, or you're going to be vegetating like a vegetable. And they want you to be on drugs and medicated and playing video games. Like Yuri Harari said, what do we do with the useless eaters? He literally said this. And we give them drugs and video games and dead end mindless entertainment. Stare at a phone for 6 hours a day and then watch TV. Take some pills, get high. Here you go. Pot's legal. Why? Because we had such a great time ruining everybody's lives with a prohibition and building a giant prison system. Now we can give you something to pacify yourself with while we exterminate you in all these other ways.
Yeah, that was pretty much what the consensus was when it became legal here. Is like, okay, yeah, so this is just so we don't see the rest of the shit you're going to do to us right now. Like,
Right. And everyone's like, we finally won one. I look, I called the police station yesterday. I had a friend that I was describing earlier. This guy's having a little bit of, dementia related issues that I'm picking up on. And I'm literally giving him a pot plant to grow in the yard. It's legal here. You can grow 2 and 3 with a medical card. So we got into this discussion, and the guy at the dispensary, because I'm down on the dispensaries because, they won't hire people from the original industry. They hire people for food service around here. If you have any experience and knowledge, they don't want to talk to you. So, they have people that just work a dead end job and they pay a minimum wage, and they've turned the business into basically a slavery system. So there's no future in it. And it's like the Borg. It's like the corporate Borg. I mean, literally, if they're going to give you a pacifier to keep you asleep, the Borg, the system's going to be heavily involved in it. It's not going to be free like it's not going to be like a family winery. It's going to be like a giant Borg corporation pushing out genetically modified crops for your consumption and putting whatever in it they want. So he goes to the dispensary. The guy tells him, you can grow as much as you want. It's based on THC level, not the number of plants. None of that's true. I'm trying to tell my friend who's got some problems cognitively going on, and I can tell he's got a blank look on his face. And I'm like, look, man, this isn't true. This is why I'm so down on this stuff, because, they would never hire me for these jobs, but yet they'll hire this guy, and he's going to tell somebody this, and they're going to get in trouble and get arrested if they get caught breaking the law because this idiot said so. And I said, oh, no. And he's like, no, that he's right. He works there. He's even telling me he was at the grow place. I'm like, that's not local. And he had it mixed up with the dispensary. So it kind of tells you he's struggling a bit from what he's done to himself. And I said, let me call the police station, right? He acted like it was 1980, like they were going to come and raid my house before he could leave because I called the police to ask a question about the marijuana laws. So he's on heightened paranoia, right? And I'm on the phone with this cop, and I'm like, hey, I got a question about marijuana. And we started laughing, and I'm like, and I told him, and he said, oh, no, that's not true. And he says, but I'm not even sure what the laws are because it's a mess. He goes, he says, I think it's 3 and 2 if you don't have a car. And I said, that's what I heard. I told him about the dispensary thing, and I said something to him. I said, you know what? I said, times have really changed. And I meant this. I said, we can all be friends over this now. And he laughed, and we both had, and we was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. It was like, hey, I'm a member of the public, man. And we have your back. We appreciate what you do. We couldn't appreciate it before, but we appreciate you now because we can be honest with each other. You're not after me for a victimless crime, and I'm not hiding and hating on you for being a fascist. This was never meant to be. It's wrong, and we should be working together. And he agreed. And but my friend still left the house like he was getting ready to go to prison. And it's like, can you just snap out of it? It's because people don't want to let go of the past. They want to live in it and stay in it. Think about this, Don. You get dementia as you get old. If you're not, it could happen to anybody. They say it's parasites, age, genetics, whatever, chemicals, heavy metals, whatever it is, the mind decreases in its ability to interface with reality as you get older, at the point where you've got to make the most important decision of your life and existence, which is to go into that tunnel to maintain the continuity of self through the death process so that you can remember that light you're seeing that's so comfortable is not where you need to go, like you've experienced, right? Did you or did you not completely forget the context of what you were going through at the point that you reached cardiac arrest or flatline for that moment and saw that light? Did you forget the context of self briefly?
Oh, when I had that moment, like, it's funny that you bring this up. I'm going to explain a little bit. I had a sensation of pure, raw love emotion that I have never experienced in this existence. I've watched both of my kids be born, my biological children. I saw it with my own eyes, and it paled in comparison to when I died. This place did not exist until I heard my wife's voice. I was becoming a part of myself, but it was the pure raw love that I deserve as a being. I was going home. There was no life review where I was going. Grandma wasn't there. Nobody was waving me over. I was just reallocating back into the energy from which I came. And no, this place didn't even exist.
Right. So you temporarily were detached from the context, but were you able to remember where you just were?
No.
That's the problem. That
It
is,
was
would you agree that that's an unnatural state of being to not remember what just happened?
Oh yeah, and it was like I said, it was literally Spinja in her consciousness who pulled me back.
Right. Now,
Like,
in the way things should be, since you were able to come back and you didn't die, it was a conscious choice, as you found out. The context of the context that you needed to make an informed decision at that moment was taken from you. Right. So that means that someone has intervened and hit you with a frequency. Obviously, it's going to be the one projecting the light. That is an unnatural state. You have to you have to do whatever you have to do in this life while you're here to be able to maintain that continuity of self as you die, so that you have a conscious choice to go into that light or to go home, because that isn't home. It feels like it's home. Now, here's the thing. Alex Collier has done a video. I guess he did a full interview with someone, and they asked him this question about when you die, what happens? And then it turned into a short, and it's been passed around on Facebook, and it's been on YouTube. It's come up in Facebook feeds and YouTube feeds that I've been watching. And he says it very eloquently, but he leaves out the most important part. He says, you're confronted with the light. All you have to do, and he's usually like, Phaseus has told me this, the problem with people who always refer to some external being as the source of the information should be a red flag, because they're not speaking from a first person perspective. They're being told something. If it's fine to be told something, but you also need the first person perspective to be able to accurately give the information to the people you're trying to inform. If you don't have that first person perspective, that should be a red flag and tell you that you don't have the whole truth. You're speaking on behalf of somebody else, and we don't know who that is. We can't trust them. We don't know. Neither does the person communicating with them, even though they have a relationship that may have spanned decades. Because they're not telling you the full context of this, for me, is a flag. It's a bad sign. Yes, you can turn around and go the other way and say, I want to go home. He's right about all of those things, but he's wrong to tell you that it's that simple, leaving out the most important part, is that if you don't do the work here, and the religions tell you, some of the Gnostic stuff tells you this, you've got to prepare yourself for this. There's tricks, there's traps, there's all these things. It's true. They're not giving it to you in the way you can understand it, but this is what's happening. They're literally stealing your context to yourself. They're taking away that aspect of you so that you will fall for this trap. And the chances of not going in that is small compared to what you experienced. It literally is all encompassing. It feels like this is where I need to be. And if you're not looking at it from the right perspective, I mean, I would look at it like this, Don. You had an experience that is going to get you out of this experience, because that was a partial, almost total mind wipe and recycling event for you. If your wife wasn't yelling your name, you would have went.
yeah.
And that would you would have forgotten me, you would have forgotten her, you would have forgotten all of this, and it would have been too late for you. And they would have been right back into probably at a dumb is where you would go, because Farsight Institute and people who remote view need to go back and validate this stuff too. I just don't like saying the Farsight Institute. we need to do more remote viewing in this community. I need to get with people and do it myself. We need more organization. We all can do this if we put the time into it. And some of us are compromised, some of us are less compromised, but together we can create a more clarified picture. And they're seeing mobile soul reclamation ships, basically soul collecting ships that go out and they're cloaked and they return to underground alien bases where there is human military personnel that are basically, my lab clones. So we're actually doing the work ourselves. So we're actually going out, our alters are going out and retrieving us or ourselves, basically. Not in the exact way, but somebody's altar was coming for you, probably 2 or 3, or maybe it was some grays, but they were coming for you and they're going to come for everybody else. And we hear reports that these soul traps, some of them have been taken down, but there's still enough to keep the operation going. The threat is still there. And all of this disinformation of you got to look for traps and everything that I've heard, and I've spread it myself, because you're piecing all this together. The West Penn papers where he talks about holes in the matrix or a shield or escape holes and traps and tubes. I've read stuff like that. Nobody's really addressing the key problem, which is what you've got to do in the here and now, because it won't matter what you see out there once you die. If you lose the continuity of self, that context of who you are, it's game over. You're not going to get out of it because you're not going to remember. And how do you do that? Well, for one, I know as in my lab, you have to get as close to the original self as you possibly can. That's the key to getting out of this. So Alex Collier left the massive amount of the biggest part of that. Because if you had that, you wouldn't even need to know that you could just turn around and go away from the light, because you would probably remember, or at least have something to tell you that there's something wrong with the scenario. But you need to do the work in the here and now. And that's the important part of it. It really requires healing, becoming a better person, all of it. The reason why being a better person, doing things out of love and from a heart-centered perspective is so important is because it is the exact opposite. It is the antidote to the trauma-based mind control that's not only present in the programs in a high degree, where it's highly concentrated on you as an individual, as a victim being put through that, but it's being done to everybody at once across the planet. This whole system is trauma-based mind control. That's what people need to realize. So when we address the public as my labs, TIs, and experiencers, when we talk to the normies, we need to take a whole different approach of what we were saying. It's a bad idea to just hit them with all of this crazy talk because it turns their brain off. You need to get down to the basics and explain to them that they are in a trauma-based mind control system. And it's all geared for recycling and to make you forget. That's why we have no long-term history of the planet. We don't remember who we were. Everything just keeps starting over again under amnesia. We have 6,000 years of history that the quackademics are willing to admit to, and everything else is a fringe type of scenario, like Göbekli Tepe. They don't want to talk about how old it is, and now they're trying to cover up. They don't want any more digging, all this stuff. They're trying everything they can to keep us away from the truth, including keeping us from knowing that we have been here for a lot longer than they gave us credit for. And we have been through endless cataclysms that are cyclic and engineered to suppress us, just like the mind wipe. Wipe out the planet, wipe out the history, the collective memory, and then do it to the individual. It's all trauma-based mind control.
I want to get to the mind wipe in a second, but there's a question, and I got to step off camera for a second. Do you want to field this one? It is question, what would ghosts and other entities be then, Don and Nathan? Just give me 1 sec.
Okay. I'm going to wait for a moment until he comes back, and I'll ponder the question. Maybe I'll just start without him. I thought he was stepping out to get something. Maybe he's going to the bathroom. But What a ghost is, let's see. What would ghosts and other entities be then, Don and Nathan? Okay, I've talked about going into the light, and I've talked about not going into the light. What we're seeing with ghosts is apparently could be a number of things. You have residual hauntings. And in the case of a residual haunting, from what I understand that to be, is someone that has been put into a type of repetitive memory loop, or what I would call an individual consciousness simulation. It could be one person in it or a small number of people. Like, for example, if you've seen the movie, I think it's called The Sixth Sense with Nicole Kidman. The premise of the movie, I was just explaining that movie, The Sixth Sense. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
Okay, well, it's really interesting that the way they did that movie, and it's old enough. I mean, I'm going to have to just tell people the plot really to understand it. But it's two families. Nicole Kidman's in one family, and then there's another family, and they're living in the same house. The difference is that Nicole Kidman and her family are dead, and they don't know it. And the other family is living in the house, so they're the new owners, and they're living there after this family has died. So the family that has died is the ghost, and they think they're alive, so they're cohabitating, and the ghosts are hearing the living, and they think they're the ghost, and the living think the ghosts are the ghost. So it's this, and you don't even realize what's really happening until the very end of the movie, when the ghost family tries to leave the house, and they can't, because they go out and there's like this fog, and they wind up back at the house. No matter how far they go, they always wind up back. They can't leave, but eventually that veil comes down, and the people who were living in the house, who were the ghosts, realize that they're ghosts. At which point, I don't remember how it ends, but hopefully it ended in a good way where they could figure that out. They finally woke up to it, and then they could get out. And I think there's a lesson here to be learned, because what we're talking about is you can go into the soul traps and you can come out of them, provided you don't consent. And it sounds crazy. It sounds like, well, how could they maintain a prison based on consent? Well, they do it by preventing you from accessing and remembering your original self. If they can convince you that you belong here and this is a normal way of living, okay, like many people do. And I asked him, it's like, why don't you question why you can't remember your past life? Why don't you question why some people are psychic and most aren't? And the ones that are can't really demonstrate their abilities in a lab, or so they claim. But in reality, they're being attacked and suppressed and put into programs. That's why those people can't go into a lab, because if they tried to go into a lab, the lab would literally be the government in disguise, and off they would go. So, we know that to be true. But the way this works is a ghost is basically someone who either doesn't know they're dead, or is in a type of a consciousness simulation, or they're caught between this world and the next, and they're here. Now, a good book to read on this would be, there's two books by Truman Cash. I don't remember which one it is, but they're available free on the Avalon Library, or Project Avalon. They're PDF format. It's called The Programming of the Planet and the Eye of Ra. Read both of those. They talk about the real use of the Great Pyramid, a lot of things with the rituals and everything. And they talk about the soul, the soul traps and everything else. The reality is that you cannot trap an Isby or a soul and keep them against their will. It's a universal law of consciousness. God is the universal mind and the architect of all these rules, and this is one of them. Consciousness cannot be contained against its own will. It can only be contained and trapped provided it's consensual. So you have the ability to go in and out of those traps. The amnesia prevents you from remembering that. That's why Don was going to go into the light. If they could take his memory of self away, even if for a moment, and then he gives consent and he goes into the light without any context of knowing that he can't get out, or, like it's a permanent transition. If he's under that impression, it is a permanent transition. He can't get out. And then they recycle you. So a ghost is someone that either knows, that has at least enough presence of self to know, don't go into the light, stay in this kind of in-between reality because it's safe. And you do see that coming out of, like, when people like channel these spirits, they travel in groups, just like a human social system. They'll have little groups that they form together of like minds, and they kind of like coexist and work together on the other side. And but they're avoiding the light, they're avoiding the soul traps. And anyway, getting back to the Truman Cash book, he talks about going into the soul traps. He talks about one instance where it's in, like, he believes it's Atlantis. He saw a young, couple making love on a blanket, laying on the ground, and he wanted to go into the mail to experience it. That was a trap. He wound up on a ship being forced into a clone body of something that looked like a gray, and then he was immediately put to work trapping other souls, and that was his memory regression. So he has some interesting stuff that you can gain interesting information and useful information in those books about the soul traps and the reincarnation system. But a ghost is somebody that's not going into it, or is someone that's being quarantined in an individual consciousness simulation, or a small, like a group one. And it seems as if we have, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but it seems as if either these are self-generated traps for people where they stay in this realm or this reality. They don't cross over and they don't exit the planet to get out. They stay here, and they may even be here under their own judgment, trapped in a loop, kind of a perpetual experience where they may just do something repetitively, or they just kind of exist amongst the living. So it's kind of a situation like that. And there's efforts. If you read the Truman Cash books, he talks about these souls conspiring with one another to avoid the death traps, to avoid the soul traps, but also staging rebellious attacks and activity on ET craft by trying to take them over temporarily and cause problems. So there's apparently a lot of rogue souls running around in this area that are still within this simulation itself, but they're operating in a rogue manner. So that would be your ghost.
I agree with that because it just makes sense. Like, if you go with the understanding that most things in this reality are energy based, the residual energy could remain in this reality, just in a different frequency or aspect of it.
It could be one of your own creation. Just like, okay, for example, when I go into a couple things that I've seen, is I've peeled back the programming. I've done healing work, and I've done some alter integration, and I've worked really hard and stayed focused since I was a child. Because the one thing about me that's different from a lot of people that I've talked to is that ever since I was a child, I always wanted to know why other people weren't psychic. I was having experiences, and I had that past life memory of being in that soul transference lab at the early part of my life. It was a room full of white light. I couldn't make out anything that was in it except for the people that were standing around me. And it's that I got into something. I didn't know what it was, but it had something to do with transporting or moving my soul to this body. But I couldn't tell that it was a medical setting or anything earth-like or base or anything like that. So I knew I was different, and I always questioned it, but I always tried to get back and to try to figure out. My goal was, from a very young age, was to remember who I used to be. And I wasn't thinking about, being a MyLab. I didn't know anything about that. I didn't think I had been abducted. I didn't remember anything. I had some weird things that happened as a kid. But I didn't know about that. But there was an internal memory that I knew that I had. It was something that I had to do, and I had to find my original self. So I always searched for it. It was like my number one goal in life. Also, number two, or running parallel with that, I would say each one has equal importance, was to heal. Because at a certain age, when I was younger, I couldn't cry anymore. I had suppressed emotions. So I needed to expand my emotional state. And I knew that expanding my emotional state was the key to opening up psychic abilities, which would then allow me to remember who I was. And I had this in me. And I haven't really talked about this because, but very, very little. I brought it up a little bit here, a little bit there, but I never understood what the context of it was and what it really meant. And I was astonished to find out that I actually went through all of this, all of these programs, these abductions and everything else, the mind wipe, and I came out of it still retaining that core self, still retaining that core memory. The most important thing was really to never forget the core of the mission, which is to return back to the original self, regardless of what was done to me, and get there to whatever degree I could. as soon as possible. So eventually that came down to doing the healing work and actually talking and going public about this, because all of it, looking back, I can look back now, and it's only been in the last year that I really recognized this as what was happening, is that I was literally living on two levels of consciousness. Even in the programs, there was a part of me that was actually observant and was there in presence of mind that was literally, I was being used as a spy in the system. See, this is what I've learned about myself over, and it took a long time to get to this point. I recognized that I came here for the purpose of infiltrating the programs. I incarnated into a bloodline that was being monitored. And then when I got there, I became like the focal point of the attention. So I was abducted and put into the programs. I don't know if it's gone through 1 or 2 lifetimes consecutively. I think it's 2. I'm trying to piece that together now. And I'd assumed it was 2 before, but I'm still questioning everything. And I want to be sure about it. But it isn't even that important at this point, because the missions that I've accomplished, the mission, I've been the spy to the system. So while I was going through the programs and in the course of my life, I was sending information that they couldn't stop through other parts of myself, through what they call quantum entanglement. But the other unhijacked versions of myself were still able to maintain a communication in a line of observance to this part of me, or whatever alters that they created in the program. So I was literally giving their enemy, which is what I work for, the opposition of this, as much information, intel as I possibly could, so that they could utilize it not just to bring down the system, but also to deprogram people who have been put through this, and of course, that's the whole population. They've mind wiped the whole population endlessly. So some of us came in for the purpose of giving intel so that they could fully understand how these mind control programs work. Because you could say, well, everyone's telepathic, the infinite mind would really give all that information out. It doesn't actually work that way. I used to think that way a long time ago, but the reality of it is that even in a full telepathic society and in warring telepathic cultures, you can still keep compartmentalized secrets and information, and it takes infiltration to get that. So I was used for that. The secondary purpose of my mission was to go through all of these things in society, because they had a whole itinerary of punishments and mind control, such as a pseudo-satanic cult that was being run by the defense by various clandestine MyLab programs that had something to do with Project Ibis, but it was basically all defense authorized research project agency tech that was derived from ET related joint programs, and they were using it to simulate an actual satanic cult that was really mostly Sitchianism, and it was an Anunnaki cult mixed with Satanism and other religions. But it was basically a program to catch people coming out of IBIS and other programs that are MyLabs that they needed to corral and control. And they used a very destructive virtual temple complex cult in order to establish contact and then ramp up the targeting for certain people that they were after to shut down and suppress. So I had to go through all of that stuff up until now, and it's all been for one single purpose, not just mostly to send information elsewhere so that the other side had intel, but also to go into this and make myself a victim and just get into everything I could and just put myself out there like a litmus test, like a walking piece of litmus paper that gets dunked, that gets put in every little chemical to change the color. I literally had to do that so that I can talk about this. So the last part of what I have to do in my life is disclosure. And so that's why I'm doing this. But I'm not sure where I started this conversation, but getting back to the mind control, like I said, the core of the mind control is to disassociate you from your original self. And that's why, like when I was in the cult, for example, they gave a lot of people false identities, and these false identities would be pagan gods. So I was in there with Lilith. There was like dozens of Liliths The girls always got that. The guys got Zeus or Horus. There was Ra's walking. We had literally all of the demons in the Goetia. People were being told that they were those demons, those fallen angels. You had people being told they were pagan gods like Veracocha and all these different things. And the whole idea of giving someone a false identity, whether it's a famous person, or a pagan god, or just an ET persona that you aspire to be because you came from someplace else. And that's what they did to me. They gave me the false ET persona. And then they built that into an archetype that I aspired to be. So if you meet somebody in the MyLab programs, or somebody that's in the community who's in the MyLab programs, and they have a specific alter that they really admire because they're stronger, they're faster, they're more intelligent, they're better off in every way than they are in their own life because of the targeting and the suppression and the things they've been through, and they aspire to be this alter. That's exactly the same type of strategy I'm talking about. It's to create a disassociation of self. So you will aspire to be that alter. And that's another trap in this community, is that when we get too wrapped up in who they made us, because these aren't ourselves, this is us under mind control, that's what our alters are. If we obsess about them too much and we don't focus on the core self and who we used to be, we're no better off than if we didn't know any of it and we were oblivious to this and still having night frights and flashbacks and not knowing that we were in these programs, because it's just as bad. In fact, if you think about it, disassociation of self is the mind wipe in and of itself, because I'm not Nathan, you're not Don, and you guys out there who you think you are, you're not those people. Those are the people you've become. We've become these people in the here and now, but it's not who we really are. That whole being, that whole higher self is a conglomeration of different selves, hijacked and unhijacked, mostly unhijacked, but the ones that are hijacked are being controlled by these the MyLab programs, but the rest of it is free. And that's who we are. And we're all of that. And we're a multidimensional being. And, we can see things from the God perspective as a multidimensional being. We can tap into all of those versions of ourselves and communicate, see things as they see them, experience life through them, and they can do it through us in a type of a simultaneous type of symbiotic form of control, and not control, but communication. You basically are everywhere at once in one place. You're any place you want to be, but you can be everywhere at once. That's the best way to put this. And they want to keep you from that. So the mind wipe that you get takes you away. That creates the disassociation of self. So you're disassociated from your core being, and you've got a clean slate, which then gets programmed. And and that's all this is. It's just a repetitive pattern of disassociating you from your core being and making you aspire to be somebody else. So when you come into society, you're forced by society, you're pressured, you're required, and you're conditioned to be somebody else. So I had to become a human. I had to assimilate to the system. And because of what they did to me and the constant harassment, they wouldn't even let me do that, because they knew that wasn't enough to contain me, just like it's not enough to contain you, Don, and all the other people that are speaking out. I don't want to sound like I'm special. I'm not. I'm just like everybody else. Together, we're all special. But individually, we still need each other. We're not really special. We're actually together. We're invincible if we can remember who we are and turn this whole thing around. But everything is based on taking you away from who you were, from top to bottom. And that's in the key to turning this around and getting back to where we need to be, and taking these abilities back that we need to defend ourselves from these programs as we expose it, is all based in the effort and the need to reconnect with the original self, which is the exact thing that they're trying to keep us from. This is the core to turning it all around and reversing it. There's so many trappings. I mean, when somebody says, when somebody talks about their self and they start out by saying, okay, I'm this pagan god, and I've done it, and then they go into being, it's like, well, how did you become a MyLab? And how did you make that transition? because these pagan gods existed. They were ETs that came to the planet for social engineering, to rule over the population. And we see that in the historical record, which the quackademics refer to as the mythos. This is the part where, there's no evidence of whoever built these megalithic structures, but then the indigenous people who lived in those structures and utilized them tell us who built them. They tell us it's the gods that came from the sky, and we know them as the extraterrestrials. And so they've just created a system where they completely disassociate us from who we are, and they create a false reality, and they create false personas for us to aspire to be. I was not meant to be a cold-hearted consumer who votes down party lines, doesn't care about anything or anyone, only what I can do for myself and how many widgets I can accumulate over the course of my unhappy existence. That isn't who I am. It's not who you are, Don, and nobody is that person. That person is a victim in an empty shell of this system, but they want you to think that. We're all children of God, they say, but the God that they propose that we're children of is a tyrant, and there's different ones. And if you pick the wrong one, you're going to get punished. And there's no way out once you make the wrong decision. People are willing to kill over which religion they've got the best one. Why? Because it says so. Right here in the book, it says everybody else is an infidel. That's divide and conquer. That's to keep us fighting and judging each other. It really is sick. I mean, there needs to be a book written that just tears it all apart from top to bottom in layman's terms without getting too academic and too scholarly, so that we could all understand what the hell we're dealing with. But it's not going to take more than that. It's going to take people getting back to the core self and using, and that should be your goal, man, for everybody that's out there. Sure, you want to know who you were and what they did to you. That's important, but you really need to know who you really are. That's where the power lies, because all they've done is taken that part of you, that version of yourself, and they've sliced it and they've diced it and divided it up into altars, leaving you as the empty vessel. And you've got to get that back. So you need to go two ways. You need to do the altar integration as well. Okay, but you also have to get back to the core self. That should be your foundational pursuit. And that includes reconnecting to God. It's all, Evie Lorgan, for the last couple of years that we've known each other, has told me all of this stuff, but it went right over my head, and for a reason, because, and she says it, and she talks about this in her writings, and so do a lot of people that you don't hear much about, that, that are kind of like passe or fringe at this point. But we need to bring those people back into the spotlight, because they have the answer to this. And the answer is to get back to the core self, reconnect with God, and take back what they've stolen from you. Because once you do, you then have power. And it really, the best way to describe this is like those movies where the vampire is there and you have a priest, and the priest doesn't have faith, and somebody jumps in and grabs the cross and the holy water. And now all of a sudden it has power over the vampire where it didn't before. Because it isn't just a matter of faith, it's a matter of belief in yourself is what it is. And you have to believe that you're somebody else and not who they made you be. You have to reverse it. You have to rebuke it and push it out and say, this isn't me. I'm not Nathan. I am someone much bigger and much better than this. And I need to get back to that person as close as I can, because that's the way out of here. And it's also a way to change the here and now, not just with your life, but to help other people. They need that person that you used to be. Everybody needs to be that person, but they also need the other person who can help them to be closer to who they really are. Because if they are, they'll want to help you, and they're not going to want payment for it. Because we all come from a place where money doesn't exist, and this whole system doesn't exist. And the fact is that your payment doesn't come in money or favors. It comes from doing the right thing and being a good person, having love in your heart, doing something good for someone and helping them, especially in this community. There's so many people that need love and support to get through this. If you can do that, you will heal exponentially faster, and you will get back to that core self much, much quicker. Even if you don't remember, as long as you have that emotional connection with that, with your core being, that core connection with inside you that is really your intuition and your emotions, that's the core of it you need to move forward with. And I can keep saying it in a different way, but yeah, I pretty much said it. So I mean, and basically getting back to the attachments, Don, because I've been able to do this, and I've realized this, and I focused on that core of myself, and I actually had to believe that it was real, because what they did is they stripped me away from all of it, and then they programmed me to believe that I couldn't do any of these things. I'd hear other people, when other people said that they had abilities, I thought that they were giving them their abilities in a delusion so that they could just contain them and pacify them, but they were under total control over the ETs. I mean, the ETs had total control over them, and they had an illusion that they had free accessible abilities that they can access when they needed it. I was wrong about that. Some people are like that, and that was what I was conditioned in the Joy of Satan cult. Everybody there got abilities from their guardian demon, who then unlocked and you were dependent, which is another thing. If you're dependent on a being for information, if you're dependent on a being for psychic abilities, you're not free, you're not sovereign, you're being used. I see this over and over in this community. If you're dealing with positive extraterrestrials and they're not telling you about all of the things that are going on, and they're not empowering you to take back that core being, and they're just feeding you a false persona of yourself, a false version of you, and you have to go to them to constantly get information to tell people you were being used. They are turning you into a virtual temple complex. Basically, you're a spokesperson for the false light. And that's what happens. And it's a trap that happens to so many people. And for every person that gets trapped in it and is used to influence others, for every one person, there's potentially tens of thousands of people over a period of time that get deceived and shut down and put through all of this mess. And they'll never find their core self because nobody's telling them about it. Nobody's telling them that's what the key to this is. A lot of people believe to get out of the matrix, you got to return to God. And essentially that's what you're doing, because that core self is a piece of the creator.
That actually makes a lot of sense. And I totally get that. Like it. Yeah, I can't over explain what you just explained, but it makes a lot of sense what you just said.
Where do you feel it at? Because what I've noticed is that when you're developing, you're actually when you're getting these abilities back, that when you're confronted with something, like you've got to sense it, or you got to use your psychic abilities to discern something. I always ask myself, not what I think, but what do I feel? Because it comes through as a feeling first. And then it eventually evolves into a full-blown experience, and then you can do things and remote influence and view and different things like that. But it starts with what you feel inside. So what do you feel inside, Don, when I was describing all of this?
Oh, it feels like I'm listening to somebody educate me on the true mechanics of this reality.
It doesn't touch the heart, though.
Oh yeah, it absolutely resonates. And yeah, you actually just hit something that I literally just thought of probably 3 hours before the show.
Awesome. What is it?
Changing the wording in my brain from I think to I feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it literally is about what you're feeling. Your body is probably the best lie detector you're ever going to find. And that's one of the things most of us haven't had stripped away from us, is that sense of right and wrong on the inside. We know when something feels gross.
Right.
We know when something's wrong.
And what do they do to us, though, in society? What do? They condition us to ignore that.
Oh, absolutely.
They tell you that being overly emotional, if you're a guy, they say it's you're being feminine. So they've even used the whole sexual division. I mean, they've done so much damage to people. And Don, this reminds me of something too that I wanted to bring up tonight. It's really important, which is the sexual trauma. Sexual trauma is probably the worst of all of this that they inflict upon you. It is damaging beyond belief, and it carries the damage. The damage stays with you. And the reason they go after sexuality or the sexual identity, sexual intimacy, because it's directly connected to love, and it's who you want to be with. It's who you're attracted to. So it's very, very important. It's a major fundamental component of the not just the human experience, but what it is to be what it is to exist, to be alive, to be a soul, is to experience love and that companionship, commitment, the devotion with someone else. And they destroy that connection because it's so powerful. And it's such a motivating factor. It literally is the core of your being, and they pervert it, they corrupt it, and they utilize it. So they take that energy and that drive and they divert it into other things that they can control, and they pervert it to the point where, they could literally make someone sexually aroused over a political perspective if they wanted to, with trauma-based mind control. They will use sexual orgasm and things like that in the mind control itself. And of course, rape is a component too. But really, in this life, where you see the big problem coming in people's lives is that through sexual trauma in these programs, what they do is they disassociate the act of lovemaking, the act of sex, with love and with the commitment that it needs to be a healthy experience, a complete fulfilling experience, what it's supposed to be. And it also procreates life. It does a lot of things. So it's a necessary need. Sex isn't necessary. You don't have to have sex in a relationship. You get older, eventually you can't do it anymore. But it's part of love. It's all part of the same thing. If they can attack that, pervert it, and disassociate you from it, then they've got control, a multifaceted way of controlling you. And a lot of times, what you see in this community, and I see it, but I see people just kind of like ignoring it and not really seeing it for what it is. When somebody overly sexualizes their self, there's a MyLab in this community. They over-sexualize their self. It's a sign of distress. It's a sign of unresolved hurt. It's a sign of trauma that hasn't been addressed. And they're disassociating the sexual act and everything that has to do with love itself, which is why they're pushing it as part of their persona. And of course, for anyone who does that, a lot of times it isn't fashionable for a guy to do it because of the Me Too movement and all of the consequences, the social penalties for being like overtly sexual with everybody if you're a guy. But if you're a girl, you can get away with it. The problem is that nobody ever really says anything. Maybe one of the other girls will say something to you, but the guys will cheer you on. And I see that in the MyLab community. They'll cheer on somebody who's overly sexualizing herself, but they're not seeing the problem. The person has unresolved trauma. That's why they're doing it. It's not a healthy thing. They should be looking for a committed, loving relationship and not just putting sex first, because when sex is first, the love is either non-existent or it's distant, it's second. It can't be that way. It's got to be both at the same time. So the problems that they caused me for a long time in my life is like the sexual act. I could not connect with the person I was having sex with. I was always off in some sort of perverted fantasy thing, even right in it, because I was programmed to think that way. I was programmed to do these things, and it's taken a long time to strip this away. And if you don't have somebody in your life that you can heal with and understands you, you're not going to get help from your significant other. It's always, what it's going to do is going to drive a wedge. It's going to split you apart, because there's a disconnect in you that your partner may not have. They may be connected with that act of love, with the sex, and everything is all one to them, and they want to be committed and feel that love in that act, and you can't. And that really causes problems, not just in your sex life or in your personal relationships, but it spills over into your life in other ways. such as the self-destructive fetishes and behaviors, and just going out and not being faithful and never actually having a loving, committed relationship, which is what you need to heal. So they've hit you every way they can. I mean, it is absolutely horrifying, disgusting what they've done to all of us. And it just, I cringe when I see people romancing the programs and what they did, but not focusing on healing, because it's another self-destructive path that they've set out for you. So if you're going to remember against their will, they'd rather you focus on what you did and be caught up in the sci-fi fantastic nature of it, and then be attracted to the accolades that people give you for recounting these stories to people, often to people who don't care about you as a person, but see you simply as infotainment. Yeah. And we prostitute ourselves in many, many ways. We're all guilty of prostituting ourselves to get our message out, knowing full well that many of the people listening couldn't give a shit about us one way or another. And that's why we need each other, because those people aren't going to understand us, but we need to help each other get through this.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. Like I am one of the most socially awkward people in the world, and the fact that I do this show every week is literally me going against what I'm comfortable with in order to get this message out. So I completely agree.
And to help yourself too. I mean, this is therapy for you too. I know it is.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things you've touched on a couple of times, and you and I have experienced this during conversations, is mind wiping. And I don't mean the one that happens before we get here. I mean the day-to-day one. Yeah. I just wondered if you have, because we're going to have to wrap this up soon, if you have any tips or tricks or focus points that people can use to help improve the frequency of getting mind wiped. Like I've had it happen 5, 6, 7 times in a show, right? Yeah. I don't know if there's exercises or something I can be focusing on or a way to battle this, because it's absolute bullshit. Like I will be in the middle of some phenomenal thought and just go dar, and it's gone.
Right. Just imagine, like, say, okay, here's a real frightening scenario, right? You're just doing a podcast and going through it. Well, let's just say you spent a couple $1,000. You booked, you got Full Disclosure Now tickets. You got hotel booked. You're going to present. You're going to tell your story in front of an audience, right? You've got it. You have a virtual audience, which is unlimited. You know, whoever sees it after the fact or live, and then you've got the people there in the room. And here you are, and you're mind wiped right in the middle of it, and you can't think. Can you imagine that? I mean, especially be bad if you didn't write anything down. You were just going, like, you were just ad-libbing the whole thing and just speaking from the heart, which a lot of us could do. But then you don't even have something to remind you of what you're going to say. So that would be like the ultimate screw job for somebody like me or you. And it was something I was really, really worried about, which is, you know, one of the many factors why I didn't do this last year. Money was the biggest, but there was other efforts to get me not to do it. There's mind control, which I'll elaborate on in a moment. But what you do about that, it's a complicated answer, because there isn't like some meditation you can do. None of these things. What you got to do is what I've been talking about, is you really have to get back to that core being. And you've got to get into doing your alter integration work, because you'll find skill sets in there that you can block that. But really at the core of it is believing in yourself, believing that you can stop them from doing it, and recognizing that you have innate power in you that they don't have, and that you're actually the stronger of the two. You're stronger than them. But in order to get that strength, you've got to return back to as close as the original self as possible. Through that process, because there isn't a quick fix to this, hopefully you'll gain the ability to block out the remote mind control frequencies. I can stop them from doing that now, and I can also block the V2K, and I can block a do, okay? And I can block the remote influencing, and I can shield myself from somebody attacking me and so forth to a degree. Not 100% from any of those, okay? So the V2K, I can tell what music they're playing in a loop. if I'm distracted, I'm not focused, it'll start coming in. And why they use music, Don, is because if I'm able to block it, or people are able to ignore it, okay, and because what they're trying to do is they're trying to really connect with your mind and get in there. So if you're blocking that signal, but then you start hearing the music and you make the mistake of thinking, oh, that's a cool song, and you think maybe your imagination is doing it, and then you start listening to this loop, and maybe you get to the end of the loop, and then you're like, I'm going to add to it, and you start thinking about the rest of the song. They're literally tapping into you through a back door. You're literally giving them permission in that way. So it's like somebody says something to you and you acknowledge it and respond to them. Well, that's exactly what you're doing. They're sending you the music. You're acknowledging it. You're listening to it. You may even add to it. You're creating a feedback loop. So they're getting in even though you're trying to keep them out. So that's one of the things that they use against me. But the strategy here is to return to the original self and try to do the alter integration to gain these abilities back. There's no quick fix to that. But I will tell you what you should do just going into this is you have to believe in yourself. You have to maintain a very, very strong focus on what you're going to say. If you know it's going to happen, make notes so that you can look back and, you can have like a topic and then you can go back, because a lot of times they'll take the topic away from you, not just what you're going to say. But if you can get back to the topic, you can reacquaint yourself with it or come up with something else to talk about that's close or, similar to what you're going to say, so you don't lose it entirely. So those are some of the strategies, but it just takes a lot of work in order to be able to block that. Recently, I've taken some steps back from this. I got to the point where I wasn't able to block the V2K very well. They were talking to me in my head and saying things, and I'm like, how the hell are you getting in? Okay. And this is like the last 2 weeks, and it was gradually getting worse. And it was just like, and then all of a sudden, I got to the point, Don, where I started seeing attachments in people. I could see the attachment. I could read its energy frequency. I could tell you what its purpose is and what it's doing to the person. I could tell you where it was. And I could also see a psionic distortion field around people that is remotely controlled. But we also create these. It's like you're in a delusion. That delusion that you create, like say you believe the government's honest and Dr. Fauci's a good man and all this stuff, and we got to do what we're supposed to do because we're all in this together, like the shit they tell you on TV. Well, if you believe that, there's literally an imprint on the astral in the energy. There's an energy signature that creates a bubble around you, a distortion that you look through and perceive reality. And it also, people perceive you through that. So what this does is it feeds off of negativity and dishonesty. If it's false information, it's deception, it builds that bubble. And any of your negative emotions, your jealousy, your envy, your fear, your anger, all of these things perpetuate this energy bubble around you, and it creates a negative feedback loop, which prevents you, or the goal is to prevent you from getting out of that frame of mind. It can also affect your astral sight. So if you're somebody doing energy work on people, you're not going to see the attachment anymore. You're not going to see or sense what's wrong with the person. You may actually, instead of seeing the person's problems, you may just write it off as mental illness. You may just assume that it's something else other than what it is. Maybe the person's on drugs. Maybe they've got personality issues or whatever it is. It's a lack of responsibility. A lot of the things that you get as a MyLab from the people around you, when they criticize you for not being able to hold down a job or to stay healthy or whatever it may be, or when you start talking about this stuff, they're already in a bubble. This bubble can be put around a person, it can be put around a group of people or an entire society or an entire planet. And it can be remotely controlled and manipulated through many, many different ways, whether it be just propaganda or, in fact, high-end technologies, frequencies, and so forth, where they can remote control a bubble of delusion around a person and amplify it. And inside that bubble, it creates a negative feedback loop. So, if you have jealousy or envy about people, maybe they're getting targeted less than you, whatever, you're going to see things through a distorted lens, and it's going to continuously distort as you're perceiving things. The worse you get, the further you get away from God, the heart-centered approach, all of that, the stronger these technologies, the stronger these effects are from these tech. because it's all based in trauma-based mind control. It's negative. There is no positive mind control.
No.
None. Free will is mind control. You're controlling yourself. You're in control of yourself. That's free will. That's positive. There's no such thing as positive mind control. Any kind of mind control only works because it's deceptions. They train you to deceive yourself, to see things through a distorted lens, and to open yourself up to be lied to. I mean, that's mind control, pure and simple. It's taking you away from God and your heart-centered, your heart-centered way of thinking and existing. Mind control can't exist where there's love. It's like you can't be in love with a narcissist. Not really. It's sort of like love, but it's not real love. It's more of a control thing.
I really like that. And I think that's a really good spot to leave this off because it's a positive end to it. And I do think that is one of the key factors of this reality is intention and love. It really does create everything here and has a lot to do with it.
Right. I just want to add one thing, though. I got to finish that thought I was talking about. How I kind of got myself back on track. I'm not 100% there yet. So let's just say if I was on like a point system and I was at like number 20, it's now taking me back to 10. I'm probably at 15 or 16 right now, trying to backtrack where I was and to open those senses up. And the core of it, the core of it is here's what was happening. There's a situation in my life I'm very unhappy about. And it's always the way they control me, Don, is they control people different ways. When it came to fear and to induce fear to create a trauma split, there was a point where I no longer had the fear responses. So they use the fear of falling as a way of creating trauma splits. It's so bad to the point where I can't even look at something on a screen I'm not physically in the situation. I'm looking at an image. I have painful psychosomatic pains in my groin area, from my waist down into my legs and my feet. It feels like my back is broke and I'm having intense electrical shocks. I've had that since I was a child. I never knew what it was. I thought it was a past life injury, like I died. They lied to me and told me that I was living in Britain and I fell off of a cliff near the ocean and I died. I was walking with my wife and I got to the edge and I slipped. It was all a lie. These were the fake ETs, which are the V2K handlers who were telling me this. They used that as a way to create the trauma splits, but also too, to manipulate me. They had to use an alien love bite because the way they manipulate me is through love, through relationships. So they take away the love, they take away the intimacy, the connectivity of me and other people. They take it away from me to where I need it like food and water. And then they give it back to me in a very distorted, controlling way through an alien love bite, for example. But they were also, what I found is that in this trauma, this trauma was literally connected to internal subconscious programming. So as I fell into a frame of mind, and this is the key to some of this too, is you'll realize that as you go through it, there's thought patterns that you can slip into that reactivates the programming that shuts down your abilities. And that's what was happening to me. I called out the V2K handlers and I was pissed off, and I'm like, because I don't have a relationship with them where we just talk and they're like friends and bulls together. They're evil people. They want to hurt me and they don't want to help me at all. Just talking to them actually activates. I found that talking to them and the way they talk to you actually activates programming inside you that work against you. So it can be coded in their speech. I've been accused of producing activation codes when I talk to people, and I've had someone say to me, maybe you don't realize what you're doing. I didn't realize that I was doing it. I knew that I was doing it on one level, but I didn't know what I was really doing. I thought I was motivating people to break the programming, but there was things that I was saying that were key to breaking the programming that people were calling activation keys. And here I am talking about. I've said a lot of them tonight. The handlers have what I would call a deactivation key strategy. They will say things to you that trigger things inside your subconscious that you don't know are there. These things are programmed triggers that shut down these abilities, and it's like a fail-safe to shut you down. That's how they were getting in, because I was going and still going through a relationship problem. there's two sides to this that are very painful. And so it's me, and there's two sides. I'll just put it that way. So, and the more I was dealing with this, and it had a lot to do with past life pain and everything else, because going back to that core being, that who you were, is painful. It's more painful actually than going into the altars. So because of you've been separated from that, you've been through all of this trauma, your soul wants to go home really badly. There's no greater pain, no matter what they do to you in the programs. That's bad. But taking you away from where you came from and stripping away who you are, that's far more painful than anything they could have done physically to you. It goes right back to the programming, that psychological, emotional damage. The worst pain you can experience is emotional pain. You could be put through physical pain at a point where you pass out, but it can only last for so long, and it's only so intense. The pain you go through as a soul, as a consciousness, when all this has been done to you, is far worse, and it can last indefinitely if you let it. So what they were doing is they were, I was talking about those, what they would say, and they would be able to activate things that would shut me down. They were doing that at the same time, but they were tapping into the trauma inside, the pain and everything. And that was activating programming that was shutting my abilities down, allowing them to get in. And I had this talk with him, and he's like, you think you're all this and you're all that, and you've got us all figured out, and this, that, and the other. And he named a bunch of things, and where he fucked up is he said something about maybe it's psychology. And it was like, oh, that's what it is. Because then I made the connection. It was like, yes, this is psych. He is literally triggering things in me it's internal programming based in trauma. They use love against me. This is the most powerful tool to get back in. So when I'm in that state of despair over a relationship, over that pain and all of it, everything that goes with it, it's a way in. And people talk about raising your frequency, being positive. Well, you can be positive, you can heal yourself. But as long as you're here, there's still a way in. There's still a way to get into your consciousness and still get you. And you have to be very strong, because when you deal with going back to the core self, it's very painful, and it opens yourself up to being manipulated and hurt more, because you get back, you start exhibiting these thought patterns, which then allows that AI and allows those attachments to start swimming around you and trying to get in, because you're literally bleeding out on the astral. You're bleeding out energy that attracts them. So, it's very, very difficult. And you could take 10 steps forward in this experience and then take 50 back simply for something like that. And I was so shocked, and I just thought to myself, I really need to incorporate this in what I talk about, because you can have an illusion of invincibility that you don't want to have, because that blinds you to what's coming, and that blinds you to what's happening to you. That literally creates that distortion field. One of the strategies to get people is that, they will let them believe that they've gotten to a comfortable spot beyond other people. And they, maybe this person says, oh, I can help people now, because I've gotten to this position where I can prevent all these things from happening to me, and now I have the responsibility to help others. They can use that against you. They can use that blindness that you're giving yourself. If you don't acknowledge that you're no different than the people you're helping. You're just, you're doing something that you've used to help yourself, and it's worked, and now you're helping somebody else with it. But you yourself could be taken back 50 steps and then become a detriment to that person. That's another thing too, because you could be doing really well and helping people, and then they compromise you in ways you don't realize. Then you've got an attachment. That attachment's putting implants in people. We've heard of this, people in our community helping one another. I'll give a good example. One person, and it's because it's public, Simon Parks. Simon Parks had gotten away from this community. He was a MyLab. He was a contactee, or he thought he was a contactee. He was more of a military MyLab with false contact, but it was with mantids. And these mantids were eating people in front of him, and there's cannibalism rituals and things. And it was just all these signs that something was wrong, and these weren't the good mantids. And I watched him over the years before I even knew who I was, go through this and talk about it, because he was one of the people I paid attention to, because he had a very interesting story. And I was interested in the insectoids too. And he had was very well spoken. But towards the end, where things really started to go bad for him, is once he got all the notoriety and people knew who he was, he started a group where he was like supporting people and counseling other MILAB abduction victims. And the women were complaining that they were getting astrally raped by a being that looked like him, that was there with reptilians and insectoids, and they were abducting these women who he was counseling and raping them, pulling them out of their body and astrally raping them. And it looked just like Simon Parks was doing it to them. They can mimic someone and make the victim think that the person who's trying to help them is doing the rape. That happened to me. And somebody accused, this was before I was even in the community. I was in that satanic Inky cult. The person that I used as a support system, that we got through it by supporting one another. It was a woman named Sherry. I still talk to her once in a while now, because she lives in Maryland, about 80 miles south of me. And she had an experience where they mimicked me and came in and astrally raped her. And she thought I did it and was upset with me. I'm like, Sherry, I can't even get out of my body, for God's sake. Why would I do that to you? It took a while for her, at least about a month, before she realized that it wasn't me, it was them. And that they had already been doing the rape on her too. They just wanted her to stop talking to me. So they had to make her believe that I was one, that I did that one at least. But that's what they did to him. And, he had nothing to do with it. And I, when I saw it happen to Simon Parks, and then it actually happened to me, but under a different context. And it's happened to other people. And that's something you got to be worried about. And, I had a woman tell me early on, her name was Catherine. She was like having, I think, like she was seeing ships and things, and was having some telepathic contact, just trying to question things. And she saw me early on when I first went public, and I was totally lost and mind controlled. And I told her in a text there was some sexual abuse going on, but I was dealing with the Stockholm syndrome. And she immediately knew what was going on with me intuitively, and just common sense, because she wasn't going through that like I was. And she said, Nathan, you're not going to like this. You're not going to like the advice I'm going to give you. You can't help anybody until you get these beings out of your life and gain your control back. And she was 100% right. That was probably the best, I would say, out of all the advice I got early on in the experience of going public, that was probably the best advice that I could have gotten at that point in time. And of course, I didn't take the advice. And when I didn't take the advice, I helped somebody. I was getting information like channeling, but it was V2K handlers. And I was getting false information, and I was giving it to this girl, and she was thankful, and she was seeing she was seeing strange light orbs, and she was seeing craft, and she was taking video of it and everything. Well, right after we had this interaction for a few weeks, her life went to hell. I mean, all sorts of things happened. Her husband had a tree removal business, or they were just harvesting trees like a lumberjack. So they were doing something to do with harvesting lumber, but and they had a small company doing it, and they nearly lost their house. They nearly lost the company. Health issues. It was like one thing after another, to the point where the husband said to her, do you think these psychic people you've been talking to had something to do with this? And I later figured out that that's the case, and I told her. By then she had intellectualized it to the point where it was like, it's like it went over her head, but I think due to the mind control. So she probably moved on and went through it again with somebody else, or even fell in the situation that I was in with her. Jeez. This is why this is so dangerous, man. It really is. And we have to be careful. And it's why we need, for people who do that kind of work, they need to be open to other people when they see things that's wrong with them, because you got to take feedback. You got to listen to everybody. You can't just ignore things and say, I'm better, I'm superior, they can't touch me. No, as soon as you say that, they already got you. Yeah. Ego is one of the ways that they can get in, and they use it so well. They're masters of it. I mean, they literally told me I had these ETs. I'd intervened with another asset who was being forced into the military. He's been put through all kinds of targeting by reptilian hybrids. And I met him through the Cosmic Switchboard on a podcast that we were on. We did like a MyLab. It was the first live MyLab roundtable on the Cosmic Switchboard. And we had all sorts of tech problems. So it kind of came down to like 3 people instead of a group of us. And first 15 or 20 minutes was just all tech problems. And so we had a conversation off air, and he gave me a loaded question. I got a psychic impression from his higher self that he needed help. He just needed my advice. I needed to tell him what I told you tonight is what he needed, but I needed to drill it in over a period of time. So after a little bit of time, a couple of talks, that's when the ETs intervened and I got threatened. And one of the things that they did to me is that, I played mind games with him because there was a female handler, it was a reptilian hybrid that was dealing with him, and he was scared to death of him. And I felt that I felt a sexual attraction toward me, but it wasn't because, I was a human or my appearance or anything like that. They don't have love. They don't experience love. They experience lust. They experience, instead of admiration, it's envy, it's jealousy. They look at you like, you're superior, but you have strength. So she saw strength in me is what she was admiring. And there was something about my soul energy being ancient and strong that she was attracted to at that animalistic, predatory level, this parasitic level. But it was for the betterment of the hive mind and to get me to control me and utilize me as a fully controlled mind lab was the strategy. So I used that against her. I pulled her in by by telling him things that were flirtatious to her and saying things to her. I got her in my energy field for the simple reason as I wanted to sense what she was about. It was totally vampiric, totally negative. There was nothing good in her. It was a shell of a being. And it was just it was very vampiric. It had no positive energy whatsoever. It was the opposite polarity of me. And all I felt from her is she thought that she could trick me to allowing her in the field and with all the things I was saying that I actually meant, which I was blocking my thoughts, so she believed them. I had the upper hand on her, and she didn't realize it. And she started to talk, give me these, have you ever, can you imagine? Here's what it's like. It's like that movie with Keanu Reeves and the guy that played, it's not Joe Pesci, the guy that played Scarface. Can't think of his name. The guy that played Tony Montana, Scarface, where he played the devil, and they were all attorneys. And the whole idea was the devil was trying to entice this high profile, high powered attorney personality to sell his soul and to be successful. And that was the premise of the movie. So they come at you from that position of false promises. It's like they'll promise you the world but give you nothing. Everything is a deception. And so she comes at me like, it's like the devil. It's like the Illuminati phone call in a sense. They call you up to tell you, hey, we really like your work, but we don't like the side. We can make you rich and famous and do all this. You just work for us, right? Well, it was something like that. They were going to do all this shit for me. And I just told her right off. And last thing she said is, why don't you let us feed your ego? I know you have an ego. And I said, absolutely, I have an ego. And I said, my ego grows exponentially when I listen to all of your false promises and all of the bullshit. And it has absolutely no effect on me. I don't have to fight. There's no inner conflict at all. I absolutely feel nothing. And I can tell you to fuck off. And it's no problem at all. And I said something, but it was more poetic than that because I had her all set up for it. I was thinking it, blocking my thoughts, what I was going to say, like a speech to make a total ass of her. She pulls her energy back. And then I had a couple more confrontations where they tried to attack me and failed. But I showed him that I could sit there and gaslight them and take the attack. And I felt like I had 2 giant clawed hands were like reaching around my head and squeezing my head. And I felt pressure, but it didn't hurt and it didn't affect anything. But I knew they were doing it. And I told them what they were. They even spoke through him and warned me. They said, you're trying to take away our asset, Nathan, and we don't appreciate it. He said it twice out of his own mouth and shocked himself that that's never happened before. They've never taken me over. She said the same thing to me in the kitchen. The first thing she said to me when I felt them watching me was, you're trying to take our asset away and we don't appreciate it.
Huh.
they went at me with a kind of a, it was like they were being diplomatic. And then when that didn't work, then they became deceptively threatening. And then, but before they did that, I was doing the flirtation stuff just to see what I could get out of it. And I wind up, they do things at 2 levels of consciousness. There's a part of me that I'm just following my intuition and trusting it. And it's like seamless, where I don't even think about it anymore. I just do it. And then I find out that I was doing it for another reason. That was a learning experience, is what it really was. Plus, I was helping him, but I needed to have that experience, just like I needed to have some of these other experiences in my life. And also, I just wanted to mention one last thing, and we'll go. There's a type of attachment that gets to people that regular people with psychic abilities can't see. It's a cloaking type of attachment. So what'll happen is, and how you do, and this is easy to do for anybody. You don't even need psychic abilities to do this. In the case like that, where you can't see the attachment, and what I was seeing, Don, is I was seeing a silhouette of a translucent energy body when I would read somebody, and I would see the attachment as a dark mass. Sometimes I would see tentacles or maybe something else that it was anchoring itself with. But it was just a dark mass, and it would be on the other. It would be, and I could look through the front of the silhouette to the back. So it was like a 3-dimensional transparency. Okay.
Huh. So
in this case, I didn't see anything. I saw a sonic distortion field, but nothing like in the person. And so what I did, so what you do in that situation, and I did this subconsciously, I wasn't even aware of it. But if you project love to that person, you're very nice, and you project as much positive energy, love, and respect, no matter what they say. They could be calling you an a-hole, whatever, being disrespectful, or maybe that, they could just be pushing back. You will get that energy signature from that attachment by promoting or pushing that love and all that positive energy, because these things recoil from it. At that point, when I was bombarding this person with this attachment, gave itself away. It had an energy burst of emotion and anger, which came through the person. They expressed it, and I felt it. And at that point, I could see the attachment. I was also able to go back and look at what I looked at previously, just like a window in time, going back to what I saw, so I can compare and contrast. What I saw in the first image was the same transparent physical form of the energy body, like a 3-dimensional, sort of shape that I could see through. But I could now see the attachment, but I saw it as I originally saw it. It looked like somebody had taken that image that I just painted in your mind of a transparent, semi-translucent silhouette of a person, and they took a tool from Photoshop where you take the little pen and you start to blur the image.
Yeah.
Just kind of look like that. Well, I could see it blurred. I could see a very faint blurred outline of this attachment. It was backpack size. It was all across this person's back. I saw another one on somebody, and this is a freaky one here. I need to get this. I have to go over time for just a minute because it's important.
Yeah.
The hard ones to see are the ones that hide their self. And if you're always projecting positive energy to even if they're nasty or even if they're just being cold, by projecting that energy, you'll get the shit will come out of the person. I mean, people talk about people being, demonically possessed, and they talk about God and love, and the person recoils, and then they, that's another. So this is a technique that, those who are psychically inclined use, who are going at it from the Christian perspective. So if we had somebody there from that particular wavelength of thought or, genre or portion of our community, they would wholeheartedly agree with me, and we'd have common ground, which is something I'd like to achieve with those people, because we need them just as much as they need us to solve the problem. We all need to come together on this, whether it's from a religious standpoint or from just a Mind Lab program standpoint. We need to connect. The last thing I wanted to say is there's other ones too, but this particular one was also bad, and you can call this the shit talker one. I call it the thought form. Actually, it's the thought form vector attachment. So this would be somebody that has a disgruntled opinion of, say, the community, We're just going to use that as the scenario. This can go for any scenario. But let's just say they feel marginalized in this community, and this is the hypothetical here, and they just had bad interactions with people. When it happens, you come into this community, and you said it yourself, people are fine for a while, all of a sudden they go ape shit. And a lot of it has to do with the attachments. These attachments often will cause health problems. So if they're in the stomach region or the low back region, wherever they're attached, a lot of times they feed off the host and they cause health problems in that area. So, but in this case, this thing was in this person's lumbar spine. It was in their lumbar region of their back, and it had deep, thick tentacles that were looked like they're about an inch across in circumference. They were pretty big, and they were wrapping around her, and they were going in her. And I'm talking to this person, and they're telling me things, and it's not resonating with me. And and it's like, this doesn't sound right. But then I started to get disoriented. So here I am. I'm listening to this. I know it's wrong, but now I'm getting disoriented, and it's not. And I feel like it's knocking me off base. It's taking away my grounding. Where my grounding was from a heart-centered perspective. It was the heart. It was the God connection that was grounding me. That is extremely important in this, because that's the core self as well. So if you see it, if you rebel, if you've had a lot of religious trauma, and you associate religion with the ET control system, which a lot of people do, you can't make the mistake of throwing God out with the bathwater, because God is inside you. What we consider to be God is the collective consciousness, but it has preserved continuity itself. So it's there as the referee. It has a will, and it is very loving. It's a very loving energy. It's inside you. You have to see God as that to ground yourself, not as, don't put it into the Christian perspective or Muslim perspective or whatever, because you're going to lose context. You're going to lose connection, because that has been corrupted. If you want to believe in the Christian God, you got to hate certain groups of people. Same with the Muslims and the Jews. Every one of these religions, these organized religions, uses God as the bait, but then it takes you away from God if you really get into it. And the really spiritual people still find God within that and struggle with it, because they're being pulled in different directions. And that's why people cherry pick verses. They struggle with their faith. They want to hate gay people. They know it's wrong, and all this stuff. So you got that going on. But I was getting thrown off base, and I was being pulled from my core, and I felt it. And immediately in my state of disorientation, I remembered something that I'd recognized and like remembered about myself, which was that, my grounding is God, is that love in my heart. As long as I can return to that, no matter how disoriented I am, no matter what they're doing to me, I will find my core self again, home base, basically. And I use the concept of God. I used all of the things that I've experienced, these positive, loving, psychic experiences that I've had. I've used all of the things that I've done, like helping other people, and then in turn helping myself. I put all of that together, and I grabbed a hold of that in my mind, and it grounded me. And at that point, I snapped out of it, and I realized at this point what was happening. That's when I saw the attachment, and what I was seeing while this person was talking is there was energy flowing up her back, over her head. And it was literally going into my forehead and wrapping around the top of my head. And that was the thought form vector. See, what was happening is this person was telling me something that wasn't true, telling me things that were out of harmony with the community, to where people were, there's corruption. So the person was trying to do the right thing, and I applaud the person for that, because their heart was in the right place, but it was being obfuscated. And what was happening is that I was being propagandized by this entity that was attached to this person. And it was doing more than just feeding me information that I knew wasn't accurate. It was literally disorienting me, knocking me off my core base, and literally forcing this into my head, to where, and I remembered, I was able to go back and remember a year before, when I had the experience of pulling out of the conference. And then all of these people came to me at the same time, and they were all on the same frequency bandwidth. They all had attachments. They were all paranoid, and they were all sharing the same opinion about different people. which I later found out was false and was actually a programmed type of, it was basically just a program that everybody was running. And they were running the same program again this year because they do this leading up to this conference because they don't want this conference. So they mess with everybody, but they've got a script. The script is like, and here's the script. Poor Brian Sang is a handler. He's this terrible guy that's mind controlled. He's got Illuminati money and he's out controlling. And basically he's like this showman that controls all of us. And then as soon as we get with Brian, all the psychic attacks stop. And we just move into this group of influencers that are one big giant virtual temple complex. You see, so this is a way to break the continuity of everything we're trying to do. So as you, and look, and I would say this is the absolute truth about this conference. He's not a handler. We're all trying to do the right thing. If there's anybody outside of this who doesn't know that and is looking in at what we're doing and what I'm part of, because I'm just a part of it, so is everybody else. Yes, Brian, he's just a volunteer organizer. He's here. He's not the guy that he doesn't want to even put himself in that ego-oriented position that people want to put him into. He purposely stays out of that title because of the ego that it feeds, which is exactly what I would do and anybody else in that position would have to do. This isn't about him. It's about all of us. We all adhere to that. That's why I'm part of this conference. So, they want people to believe this crazy scenario. And it's a program to cause division. So they've got people that are programmed who have been disgruntled and have been on the outside of this, and this is where these thought form vector attachments come in, because you don't need to have the attachment on you to be affected by the script that they're pushing. You just need to interact with the person and not have your defenses up because of the internal programming, shutting down your abilities and making you an empty, basically a open programmable vessel so that this stuff can get in you. And going back last year, I was able to compare my experience. And I'm like, that's what they did to me last year. People that mean well come into your life. They're on cue. It's like the light bulb. It's like, I'm sure you heard of this. There's a group of like, I guess they're My Lab activists, and it's called the Light Brigade, right? Well, I took that name and I called it the Light Bulb Brigade because it's if their handlers flip a switch and the light bulb comes on. And this has nothing to do with the Light Brigade. It has nothing to do with those guys. It has to do with just people that are being mind controlled. So when the light bulb goes off, they flick the switch. It's like the program activates. And now the porch light's on, but before it was dark. And then they basically go out and they start spreading, dissent. They start spreading this divisive ideas. And it's not that they're not really conscious of what they're doing. They're being deceived themselves. And when they talk to you, it's an enhanced form of influence. That's what these attachments do. So they're literally projecting thoughts into your head as you're listening to the person talk. So it's making it feel, and what it did with me last year with the people that I had these interactions with, is it made me feel like I was part of something that I should be part of, because the whole of the conference, the group of people, they were all being used for this nefarious purpose. And now I'm on the right side over here. I can see it, but in reality, I wasn't. I was brainwashed. I was mind controlled.
Yeah.
And you got to be willing to admit this. I mean, I'm not perfect,
No,
So I was the one that apologized to Brian over blowing up over an argument over the phone, which was all engineered from the start.
I am gonna weigh in on that, and I do have one more question before we get going. Sure. I don't know Brian much more than I was in a very hard time last year because of a lot of the things that I was coming to understand about this reality. And it saw me temporarily leaving my employment, where Brian was more than happy to offer me the position of making the advertisements for last year's conference and affording my family the opportunity to, eat when
Right.
we were coming up short on money. So if he's an evil person, I'm a fucking idiot.
I know, exactly.
And this is from Derek. What advice would Nathan give if you feel like you might actually be targeted? How can you break that cycle?
I couldn't tell you how to break the cycle. I can just tell you how to lessen the impact. I can tell you how not to allow it to affect you. I can give you strategies. Like I gave the example earlier of the medical CoIntel Pro thing. If you don't want to become overly paranoid and blame everything on what's happening to you. You have to look at it objectively, and you got to step outside yourself and look at it as a third party and to get that objectiveness. But the best advice that I could give you is what I've talked about tonight, which is getting back to the heart center, making decisions based in love, um, learning to look at people regardless of their flaws, being able to look at them and see the good in them, but not being foolish, obviously, to be naive to let somebody who's bad, who has good in them, because everybody does, take advantage of you. You have to do it in a healthy way, but you have to change the way you think. You got to shift into the positive. They're trying to keep you into the negative. They want you to think negatively. The reason they want you to think negatively is because when you do, like I've described before, it's like you're in the Amazon River and you're bleeding out blood and you're being eaten by piranhas. Because if you put out negative energy, because that's what you're experiencing, it sends out, it literally sends out a beacon on the astral. And I was shown this. These things that I see are to help other people, to explain it, to help other people who can't see it. And what reason I was seeing it, and right now I'm not able to control what I see. It's like another part of me shows me. It is a part of me. Another part of me shows me things. And then I start to learn and I gradually gain control from that point. A lot of people will agree that when they get abilities and they start to they come in that way. It's just like they suddenly happen and then you learn to control it. It's a part of yourself, unlocking it and making you more whole again, closer to your original self, like I was saying. And anyway, I'm trying to, I think I actually, here's what I was going to say. I saw an implant. It was a spherical ball. It was like a gray color. It was metallic looking. I was entertaining what I call a dependent thought pattern that I was going through in the past year, like about a year ago. And so I revisited it and I was thinking about it. And I was thinking about how I was thinking and whether or not that meant something. Immediately, as soon as I began to put myself back into that thought pattern, I saw this metallic sphere fly up to my left side, and it had about 6 ropey looking metallic appendages that were, they were kind of hanging over like floppy. And then all of a sudden they just came to life and went like this and stuck right into my energy body like parasites. And it felt disgusting, like worms is the kind of response that I had. I kind of had like a internal revulsion of it. It was like, ugh. That taught me that just those thought patterns alone can attract these things. So you really got to stay in the positive. You've got to look for loving relationships. When the activity that you're being hit with is trying to force you to isolate because you're being stalked and things like that, you can't do that. If you're being gang stalked, the best advice is to get other people involved with you that you can trust, to care about, like friends, family, to see it, to validate it. You need to get people to see these things. You need to get validation. It's going to be difficult because they're going to make people not want to talk to you. They're going to manipulate them. But you're going to have to be consistent and continuously fight. And you cannot allow them to make you afraid and withdraw and succumb to the attacks, because they want you to isolate, and then they can victimize you completely, because you're not going to be able to get help and advice and hear other alternative opinions and have any help at all or any way out if you isolate. And that's what they want. They want you isolated and shut down. The best advice that I can give outside of that is to do what you can to meet other people like yourself and form either a community or just form a support system with people that you can rely on who are heart-centered you got to work on getting yourself there too. It's a work in progress. Everyone has to do it. What I do is one of the things I used to do, and I still do to this day, a little less now because I've gotten more control over myself. But I had a speech impairment, so what I used to do is every interaction I had with people where I spoke, or even if I didn't, I would still analyze it because a lot of cases I should have spoken. Is that I review how I interact with people, and I ask myself, how could I make it better? In whatever way it could be, how could it be more fruitful, more advantageous, more positive for everyone involved? What could I have done? What could I have said? I look at how I act. I look at how I stand there. Like how I move. All of these things factor in, and you just got to keep that endless self-evaluation going. And you have to work to refine yourself to make yourself a better person through that, and through the connection through these new connections with others, who hopefully you'll find that are heart-centered people. You can form a circle of protection for yourself and work through this. And that's the only advice I can give you, because unless these programs are ended and all of it stops, not just the MyLab programs, but the political targeting, and all the other reasons that they target people. Once that's shut down, it'll be a whole new world for all of us. But until then, it's God, it's each other, and it's love. And that's what you have to focus on. And you have to do the best you can. And we win this by sticking together and doing the right thing for one another, not by separating and forming little packs and groups where we hate on each other because we have differences or disagreements that are mostly illusions and engineered in the first place. So it's love and togetherness and support with each other is the best advice I can give you. And through that, you'll heal. And then through that healing, you can find strategies, and you can also lessen their ability to get into your mind. The more negative you are, the more open you are, and the more manipulative, the more easy you are to manipulate, is what I was saying.
I think you're dead on there. And again, it really is about love, and the frequency you're projecting is what you're going to draw in. You can even look at it through the material science aspect of things. But this has been an amazing 3.5 hours, Nate. You have done nothing but drop knowledge and pearls of wisdom for people. They were loving it in the chat. I appreciate you, brother, and I thank you for enlightening us with the things that you've experienced.
Well, all I can say is that for all the good that I did tonight, I actually benefited more. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that, you do get that when you help people and you speak from the heart. It's a cleanse. It really is. And you have to lose the fear and the shame, because there's no need for it. Healing comes when you lose those two things. And you have to open up to people and express yourself and show them who you really are. If they judge you wrong for who you really are, and you come from a love-centered, heart-centered, God-centered perspective, then they're compromised and they're not ready to be around you. And it's not good for you to be around them. You need to find other people. And then together we'll grow like that. And then eventually those people that we had problems with will eventually, they're going to come around in time, whether it's in this lifetime or some future date. Wherever it is, it's a work in progress, and we're all responsible for each other and ourselves. And we have to make sure we practice that every day. It's not about just us. It's all of us. Because if I take care of you and you take care of me, I don't need to even bother I don't have all that burden of taking care of myself anymore. Life gets better and it gets easier because that's the way the system was always meant to work.
I again think you're completely right. I don't think this is the way it's supposed to be.
No, and it makes you cry, literally on the inside and the outside, when you really take it to heart. We are in a disgusting prison, and we need to end this prison. We need to save the people in it. We need to get out of it, and we need to turn this world back into a world that people can enjoy being on. And it's not meant to be this way. And it isn't just us. The animals and the plants and everything else is suffering too. Look
Absolutely.
at your pets. If you can't make that loving connection with people because of the trauma that they've done to you, look at your animals and your pets. Start there. That's actually what I did when I was younger. I mean, my friends, my real friends, my real close family were my pets. It was mainly the dogs. And they taught me unconditional love again.
Oh, shit. Yeah. And speaking of unconditional love, Derek is my one and only lonely fan. I don't have OnlyFans. I have lonely fans. And I appreciate you, buddy. But no, Nate, exactly. I think you have just driven this home tonight. Like, Derek, the guy there, was just asking, how do you make a difference? Well, it's about changing perception. They want you in that low frequency, that low vibration, that
Yeah.
misery in which we're supposed to reside because we're just miserable scum on this planet. And it's all bullshit. We're actually a part of God. Like, that's the long and the short of it.
Sounds like you get a little bit emotional.
I was there. It's a touchy subject.
Nothing to be ashamed of. It's actually good. It's actually healing to do that. I mean, I last podcast, not the last one, the one before that, I went on Rob's show and I talked about some really painful things. And I'm not ashamed of falling apart on, the camera, because it helps me to get it out. I don't have a chance to express it. I can't just talk about this with people around me and my family and friends because they can't relate. I instantly they turn off their attention to me and they write me off as being, whatever, defective in some way because I don't act like everybody else that they know, and then I don't act like them. But we have the ability to do this. We have this opportunity, so we need to use these podcasts to help each other. And if you got to cry and just to get your words out, it should be something that we should honor and respect and not be ashamed of, because it shows that you have the conviction and the courage to be you, and that's taking you back to your original self. So what I'm hearing in your voice, you can hear it in mine, that tremor in your voice, Don, and that emotion that I'm seeing and feeling through the screen or through the ether from you is that's you returning back to that core self. And like I said, it hurts. It hurts more than anything else. I don't care what they put you through in these programs. Getting back to that self is what hurts the most. And that's why it's so difficult. And that's why so many people go for the altars first, when they should be doing both, with the primary focus on the core self, secondary focus on the altars. But the core self is the healing, and then that will flow into the altars and then that healing process. Because otherwise, if you do the opposite, those altars will be able to manipulate you. And how many people have we seen in this community that mean well, and they go for a while, and boom, it's like the light bulb brigade switch goes on, and they change, and it's never for the better.
No, I've personally experienced it more than I care to count in the year and a half, 2 years that I've even been involved in this community. It sucks every time.
Exactly, because you feel like you get attached to people, you make that connection, and for a while they may open up, and you open up to them, and then all of a sudden, the switch gets flipped, and they're not even back. They're not even their self anymore. They're still them, but they're not their self. Yeah. We got to look, and we can't be mad at these people. I mean, we're disappointed, sure, certainly, but we have to have love in our heart when we look at them for everything that they're doing wrong to us and others and to their self, mostly their self. We have to look at them as a person in pain that needs healing and they need help. And we have to be there when they snap out of that and give them endless chances, provided, they're able to, to meet you halfway. If they're not, got to give them more time and more distance, unfortunately. But don't forget them. Always keep a little string. Always keep in touch with them. Always try to go back and say, how are you? If somebody's sick in this community, don't hesitate to see how they are. Just reaching out to somebody to say, excuse me, just reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, I really care about you. I appreciate you. I don't want to lose you. That can make the difference to where to whether they live or die.
It's true. I actually just lost a friend, but I'm not going to get into that tonight.
Yeah, it's too much. We've been going too
Yeah.
long.
So I want to thank you again, Nate. This was an amazing conversation. I want to thank everybody that stuck around in the chat and everybody that listens in the future. And I'm going to wrap the show the same way I do always. And it's actually kind of mine and Nate's both advice tonight is if you can go outside, please go outside because it's a lot better than being in front of this screen. I love you guys.
Hey, and since it's warm, take off your shoes and go barefoot. You'll really get something out of that too. Get back to the earth and connect and ground yourself.
Absolutely. And let me end it. No, end stream. Why the fucking thing?